This is Atomic Shinobi, and today I'm going to narrate second and final part of What If Naruto Became the Summoner of the Dead. If you enjoy this video, please like, share and subscribe to this channel. Now wasting no more time, let's start the story.
When Nawaki stepped aside to allow Dan, an older ninja recruit, to accept the summoner Phantom Pact, he said, "Thank you." With a serious tone, the older man put his phantom hand on Naruto's right arm. "I, Dan Watsuki, swear fealty to Naruto Uzumaki, in a pact of summoner and spirit." Everyone watched in anticipation, and there was a pause. When the familiar flaring of white light was absent, Naruto scowled. "I, Dan Watsuki, swear fealty to Naruto Uzumaki, in a pact of summoner and spirit." Dan made another attempt. As everyone gazed at the spot where Dan was touching Naruto's arm, there was a foreboding silence. Gazing at his collection of phantoms, Naruto said, I am sorry, I can't feel any bond forming. I think I might have reached the phantom limit that Mei was talking about. It might seem that our prepared plans for putting phantoms in reserve comes much sooner than expected. Mei grumbled as she gazed at the older male. Dan, is it? I think Naruto is at his current summon limit. He would be able to grow in his phantom summoning skills in the future to bond with you. But in the meantime we would have to put you on reserves. With a worried expression on his face, Nawaki said, "Then let Naruto and I break our bond so that Dan can take my place. He is the man my sister loves, he should be the first person my sister sees." Dan calmly interrupted, glancing at everyone, "And you are the brother that Tsunade loves. I see no point in you breaking your bond now. I can wait." Makoto looked at Naruto and hesitantly said, "In any case, there are plans for Naruto to build an area rich in spirit energy in Konoha. We had not decided on the place yet, but once the place is set up, any phantoms in the area would be able to form a physical body, much like in the phantom realm. You'll be able to meet your loved ones there once that happens." Dan nodded, saying, "That would be a boon then. It would of course have to be someplace secluded since I understand the need for Naruto's ability to remain a secret. Yes. There's the Uchiha compound to choose from, but of course, with the amount of money that Naruto now has, he could afford to buy a secure compound for himself." Makoto concurred. The end result would depend on what Naruto decides. Naruto sighed and rolled his eyes. After spending so much time with Makoto, he could see her subtly pressuring him to decide. As all of his phantoms gazed at him, including an interested Sasuke who had overheard Makoto's spoken conversation because she was in physical form, Naruto said, Fine, I'll decide. Very well, once we reach Konoha, we'll turn the Uchiha compound into a spirit-rich area. I see no point in wasting money to buy a new place. Even if I have to put up with Sasuke Teme." Sasuke chose to smile contentedly rather than respond, knowing that his mother would soon be able to transform into a human being at will in the Uchiha compound. "In the meantime, Naruto, I would like you to help me send a letter," Dan said, addressed to Tsunade Senju. Death Fields, since one of his actions 10 years ago resulted in the creation of a soul summoner bond to his energies. The powerful entity known as Death, one of the numerous death gods ruling the infinite realities, could not help but feel a peak of annoyance and anxiety. A powerful elemental energy clashes with the powers of a death god to create soul summoners. These people who possess the ability to die are bound to the death god, whose energies created their abilities. Soul summoners will become mortal children of the death gods they are bound to, as they will ascend to become a new death god upon their deaths. It also implied that soul summoners are dangerous because they are mortals who are turning into death rather than superior beings made by the higher powers and bound by their laws. Death gods have specific guidelines for a newly formed soul summoner to address such situations. Every soul summoner has a vulnerability. The influx of death energies in their bodies is weak and unstable for the year after their powers are activated. If they are killed during that time, their souls will be harvested to the afterlife rather than becoming new death gods. In situations where soul summoners are created, the death god bonded to the soul summoner is permitted one champion in the mortal plane to hunt down the soul summoner before their powers reach maturity, even though the higher powers forbid death gods from having physical interactions with the mortal plane. And the present-day death god knew exactly who to send on this quest. The man responsible for all of this, the man whose soul was now permanently bound to death. The death god's voice reverberated loudly in the gray fields of death as he said, "Minato Namikaze." The appearance of the phantom bond to him created a swirl of death energies. Rags of clothing dangled from the man's body as he gazed up at the death god with hardened eyes. As he gazed at the man, the death god grinned grimly in satisfaction and said, "I have a mission for you. Something which you started, that you will now end." Wave Village, the home of Tazuna as Sakura and Sasuke waited for breakfast in the kitchen, Naruto sighed. particularly after the later Kakashi clones advised him to wait until the real Kakashi returned before testing his new phantom confinement powers. The last 3 days have flown by in an entirely idyllic manner. The tasks given to Team 7 included clearing out the numerous smashed buildings in Wave Village and assisting with the construction of a bridge, both of which were accelerated significantly by Naruto's clones. With the exception of Mikoto, Nawaki, Dan, and Hiyashi, who stayed close by to silently guard Team 7, training was irregular and the phantoms were rarely visible. Now that the recruitment of new phantoms had ceased, Tsukumo and the other phantoms were out in the Death Realm attempting to learn more about soul summoners. Each night, the 4 phantoms residing with Team 7 transformed into physical forms thanks to Naruto, and they were given the mission of making every seal they were aware of in order to test them out when Kakashi returned to Wave Village. It would be an understatement to say that Sasuke was unhappy with the amount of valuable time his mother spent creating seals, but he remained silent and avoided Mikoto whenever she was present. There wasn't much to do today because yesterday, amid much excitement, the bridge was finished. Yesterday evening, before he dispelled, the final Kakashi clone had made sure to give Team 7 instructions to pack their things. The villagers had prepared a feast to commemorate the bridge's completion, and today was meant to be their last day in Wave Village. Tsunami smiled as she sat the bowls of carrot soup in front of Inari and the 3 genins, saying, "I didn't cook a heavy breakfast today. There's going to be a big feast later in the day once Kakashi and Haku returns." Sakura asked inquisitively, "I wonder where Kakashi-sensei went off to. He had been gone for 5 days." With hesitation, as though she knew something she was not disclosing, Tsunami remarked, "I'm sure Kakashi has his reason. Anyway, tuck in and finish the soup, it will still be a while before the feast." From the other side of the table, Inari laughed, "The villagers are going to be so surprised. I saw them pooling this month's harvest this morning even though Grandpa said he'll handle the preparations of the feast himself." Tsunami frowned and remarked, "You can't blame them, Inari, they're just trying to help. They didn't know what your grandpa had arranged." Sakura gave a sympathetic nod. The villagers were unaware that the previous day Dazuna had traveled to the nearby city and taken some of the gold. He had ordered a lot of food and beverages to be delivered to the village before the feast started because of his dinner conversation with Tsunami the night before. Before leaving, he had also used his money to fund a few other companies in the city. After learning of the enormous wealth his family and Wave Village now possess, thanks to Haku and the late Gato, Tazuna had undergone a significant transformation from the inebriated old man to a solemn and serious man. The beer bottles were no longer in the house, and he was frequently found in his room in the evenings organizing accounts and making plans. For the past few days, Tsunami has treated the 3 genins like honored guests, expressing her sincere gratitude and working harder to make delectable meals each day. She did, however, cry in the kitchen on a few occasions, though it's impossible to tell if it was happiness for her family or sadness that the money did not arrive sooner. A ragged-looking Kakashi and a weary Haku showed up at the bridge builder's house just as the sun was rising high above the sky. Their clothing smelled of sweat and had bloodstains on it. By that time, Tazuna had come back from the village. He had given them a quick glance before acknowledging and thanking them, as though he had known where they had been going. Tazuna headed for the little bathhouse in the back and said, "I'll prepare some hot water for both of you. We will begin the feast after you have rested." Kakashi remarked wearily, "Thank you, Tazuna, but we can start once Haku and I had washed up. I need Team 7 to set off for Konoha before the sun sets. My team has been recalled back to the village immediately." Then Tsunami nodded and said, "Of course. I'll take fresh clothes to the bathhouse, just rest for Willia Inari. Prepare some hot tea for Kakashi and Haku-san." In the middle of the chaos, Naruto, Sakura, and Sasuke stood awkwardly staring at Kakashi-sensei and Haku while Tazuna went off to prepare the water. Tsunami climbed the stairs for new clothes, and Inari ran into the kitchen to boil some tea. To everyone's surprise, Sakura was the one who posed the question. Sakura hurried forward to see if Haku was hurt and inquired worriedly, "What happened to both of you?" Kakashi sat on a chair and closed his eyes to rest, saying, "You'll be told when we get back to Konoha. For now, rest assured that no one would be coming after Wave, Tazuna, Konoha or any of you for the misbegotten wealth that all of us had gained from Gato. And Naruto, we'll talk on the way to Konoha." The villagers were told that the feast would start as soon as Team 7 was prepared when the afternoon arrived. Everyone was startled when wagons loaded with pricey food and beverages clattered onto the recently constructed bridge, causing a brief moment of chaos. After being called, Tazuna soon showed up along with Haku, Tsunami, Inari, and the rest of Team 7. Then, as the villagers watched in disbelief, Tazuna handed the wagon leader a small sack of what appeared to be gold and started to sign off on the delivery receipts. 10 men in samurai armor, along with women and children, were transported in 3 of the wagons, which were devoid of food. There were heaps of clothing and blankets on one wagon in particular. Tizuna then started giving the caterers instructions to arrange the food and their meager supply of food for the feast in the village square, which had already been cleaned by the community's combined efforts. The remaining food was sent to the village's granary, which Tizuna had instructed the villagers to clear with Naruto's assistance just before the bridge was finished. Since the granary had not been used for many years, everyone at the time was curious about what Tizuna would do with it. There wasn't much food in the village, and the granary didn't have any extra inventory. When Tizuna ordered the village guardhouse and the vacant houses in the village to be cleaned and repaired after the granary was cleared, the villagers were also perplexed. The villagers pondered whether Tizuna had planned this whole thing in advance as they watched the wagons full of goods being unloaded and the samurais that had arrived. One of the men who assisted in building the bridge, Senzi, yelled, "Tizuna, what's the meaning of this? The village can't pay for all of this," as they observed the wagonmen and caterers moving their wares into the granary. Tizuna calmly looked at the astonished and startled group of villagers and said, "Calm down, this is something that can only be told to those of the village. I will tell everyone what is going on, once the food has been stored and set up." Unfortunately, he observed that their clothes were filthy and worn, a result of the village's overall poverty, but as of today, everything was going to change. He turned to the villagers and selected the most sane one. Over the excited chatter of the villagers, Tizuna yelled, "Selen, Mayan, and Taken, line up everyone and share the blankets and clothes on that wagon among the villagers. Everyone there is not needing to rush. Selen, I trust the 3 of you to distribute the clothes fairly. For the current moment, all that you need to know is that I recently came into a sum of money and all these are paid for through someone else. Now go, we'll talk later." After a brief pause, the villagers gathered their kids and rushed to the wagons with the blankets and clothing that had been separated from the others. While many of the men gave Tizuna curious glances, some remained to assist with unloading the food. To calm them for the time being, Tizuna simply nodded reassuringly. Tizuna said, "I will explain later. The fewer outsiders who knew about this village secret, the better." He had been reminded of that fact by Kakashi 5 days prior to his departure. If it were known that Wave had inherited a portion of the huge sum, Gato's blood money might cause a great deal of animosity in the village. For this reason, Kakashi had given Tizuna precise instructions to follow before setting out on his mission. To protect Wave, the strong ninja had even made arrangements with Konoha's 3rd Hokage to fabricate some facts. Tizuna was deeply humbled by all that Team 7 had done to defend his little village thus far. Before the ninja left the Genin's view and entered the bathhouse, Tizuna glanced at the note Kakashi had handed him. It was addressed to Tizuna directly and came from the Hokage. He had to complete a few tasks in order to make sure that Kakashi and Haku's efforts to protect Wave Village were not in vain. By the time the clothes were distributed, the food was stored, and the wagons carrying the laborers and caterers departed Wave Village via the new bridge. It was late afternoon. On the second day after it was finished, the bridge had already seen a lot of traffic, something the villagers had not anticipated for a very long time. With the assistance of the villagers, who had witnessed greater wealth today than they had in the previous few months, the 10 samurais, along with the women and children who were presumably their families, were placed in the guardhouses and vacant homes. As they waited for the villagers to assemble, Team 7 and Tizuna stood on the podium that had been erected in the village square a few hectic hours later. Among the villagers gathered were the samurais and their families. The audience fell silent as Tizuna began. "A day ago, I left for Yalan City, which was within a day's journey from here, along the coastline of Fire Country. Everyone was curious about Tizuna's source of wealth. I started negotiating with traders to regularly deliver textiles and food to Wave Village. Along with hiring a construction company to assist us in rebuilding Wave, I've also recruited a group of samurai guards to join our village as members along with their families, and I expect everyone to treat and welcome them as fellow villager. The money used for all of these transactions was provided by our benefactor a few days ago, and that benefactor is Konoha." The villagers gasped in confusion, wondering what Tizuna was getting at. Surely Konoha wouldn't be so generous as to lavish them with wealth without reason? A sum of money was given to set up the Wave Village funds. They had also given a sum to each of my family members in order to set us up as watchers over the villager. Tizuna clarified. Since Tizuna was the village leader in name only, none of the villagers voiced any objections. His efforts resulted in the construction of a new bridge for the village and, indirectly, Gato's demise. Tizuna went on in the quiet. The terms are simple. The money is given freely by Konoha, without demand or interest. In return, Konoha requires Wave to transform itself into a reliable trading hub and start an alliance with each other. Konoha lacks trade in the shipping industry, and expects us to take over in this area. They consider this a prudent investment. What? But you never discussed with us, a villager named Erlin angrily shot back. I was given a short time to make my choice, but if the village as a whole refused, Konoha acknowledged that it would take back the money it has put in the village funds and will retrieve its presents from Wave Village. Tazuna clarified. What I've paid for today would be considered a gift from Konoha. At Tazuna's words, the crowd burst into animated conversation, and some of the louder men started shouting at each other. Silence! Exclaimed Tazuna. You can make your choice now or later, but as of now, let's enjoy the gift that Konoha has given us. Since the woman was the only healer in the village, Selen yelled, No, I say let's make our choice now. Someone has actually seen the potential in our village and invests in us. I say we take it. Her words carried some weight and influence. But did Konoha clearly states the terms as you said it was? Kakashi, who had been standing behind Tazuna, hurried forward and pulled out a scroll, reading from it as he spoke to the crowd, saying, Yes, the terms are clearly set. Please, allow me. Dated 5 days ago on 7.8.90 in an effort to establish Wave Village as a trading hub and potential trading alliance partner, Konoha grants a free trade agreement with it on this day, as mandated by the Konoha Village Council and approved by the Fire Daiwaimo. An advisor from Fire Country would be assigned to assist in the transformation of Wave Village and would be stationed in the village indefinitely. An undisclosed amount of money is given to the village's funds, which are only known to Wave's village leader and 2 village council members who were chosen from Wave Village itself per the terms of this agreement. The village would receive 6,980 ryo as a goodwill gift, which it would be free to spend however it sees fit. In exchange for their services in the transformation of Wave, Tazuna and his family would receive an undisclosed amount of money, which they are free to spend however they see fit. In order to strengthen Wave Village's ninja garrison, the partnership stipulates that all Wave Villagers' firstborn children are entitled to free education at Konoha's Ninja Academy. The following are the terms of the partnership with Fire Country and Konoha. 1. The 2 parties' free trade agreement. 2. Discussions on future alliances. 3. Space for the Fire Country advisor. 4. Access to village funds would require a majority vote from the 2 members of the village council and the Wave Village leader. 5. Wave Village's firstborn children are eligible for free education at Konoha Ninja Academy. The agreement will be finalized, and Konoha will recoup its investment from the village fund if Wave Village withdraws from it at any point in the future. 3rd Hokage of Konoha, Sarutobi Hiruzen, signed. Naruto, standing behind Kakashi, looked shocked by the significant distortion of the facts, but Kakashi shook his head and shot him a warning glance. To prevent Naruto from speaking, Haku also pulled at his hands. Haku said to Naruto in a low voice, almost overpowered by the villagers' ecstatic cries as they burst into animated chatter, "Remain quiet. It is for the benefit of everyone. Kakashi and your 3rd Hokage has everything planned out. This is one of the reasons why Kakashi and me have been away." Kakashi had descended from the podium and handed the scroll to Selen, who read it before passing it on to the others. Sakura's eyes were questioning as she glanced at Haku. Sakura started to say, "What do you mean? You are the one that gave everyone the money from Gotoa," but Sasuke interrupted, glaring at her. With a shrewd glance at Haku, Sasuke said, "Use your head, Haruno. That money is blood money. You think Goto's thugs would leave us alone once they knew we distributed it among ourselves? They'll be after all of us wanting a share. I don't know how many of Goto's inland operations you have shut down within just 5 days, but there's probably still a lot of Goto's men out there who would want the head of those who divided Goto's money among themselves." Haku chose not to respond further, saying with a thin smile, "That's a good guess, and you are half right. Your 3rd Hokage will tell you the rest when you get back to Konoha." Her face had a shadow. Whatever had transpired over the previous 5 days had left its mark. He wants all these to be done with the utmost secrecy. Looking somewhat indignant that the old man was misleading Wave's villagers in this way, Naruto demanded, "Old man Hokage really came up with that chunk of bullshit Kakashi-sensei's telling the villagers about?" Sakura hissed in surprise, "Naruto, don't talk about the Hokage like that. Part of it was planned by Kakashi, while the rest are added on by your 3rd Hokage. He needed something to convince the villagers the money isn't given for free. People tend to suspect something is going on, especially if such a large sum of money drops into their laps without reason." Haku clarified, "From what I heard, he got the Fire Daiwaimo in on the plan as well. He doesn't want people to know where the money comes from in case Wave Village gets threatened." Haku stopped when the villagers began shouting and cheering loudly. The villagers all chanted the same sentence, indicating that they had made up their minds in the brief time that had passed. The villagers' loud voices echoed in the village square as they exclaimed, "We agree." Thus, the contract was finalized. Wave Village and Konoha formally partnered at 12.8.90, and the new bridge was dubbed the Great Konoha Bridge. As Team 7 led by Kakashi made their way quickly across treetops, Naruto's stomach growled uneasily. Running on top of trees was the quickest way to move now that they had all learned how to do so. They were now an hour away from Wave Village, and Naruto was starting to feel guilty about overindulging in the feast. Naruto, who was at the rear of Team 7, moaned softly, "I shouldn't have eaten those buttered shrimps." In order to prevent Naruto from falling behind, Haku, who was protecting their backs, kept up with him. A few feet ahead of them, Kakashi, Sakura, and Sasuke were moving at a good clip, though Sakura already appeared to be growing weary. It had previously taken nearly a week to travel by land from Konoha to Wave Village. If there were just Kakashi and Haku in the group, he might be able to reach his goal of returning to Konoha from Wave in less than 4 days. However, his objective might have been a bit unrealistic with 3 genins. With agreement, Haku remarked, "Heavy food does make long journeys uncomfortably. Naruto, if it is possible, when we make camp for tonight, could you give Zabuza form? I have not seen him in 5 days." Naruto turned to face the phantoms that were pursuing the group and remarked, about that he hadn't been around these few days actually. He's been roped into information gathering in the Death Realm. "Makoto, can one of you send a message to Zabuza asking him to meet us in a few hours' time? Though I am not sure how he's going to find us in Konoha. All phantoms bond to you can sense your location through the phantom. Summoner bond." Makoto clarified. "I'll return to Death Realm to pass the message. In the meantime, Hazashi, Dan and Nawaki, look after the children for me." Despite Naruto's outraged sniff at being referred to as a child, Dan stated, "We'll do that." As Makoto disappeared from view, Naruto nodded and said, "Thanks Makoto." Naruto turned to face Haku's curious gaze and grinned. "Makoto just left for the Death Realm. She'll get Zabuza to meet us by the time we make camp." Before abruptly tensing up and racing forward in a blur of motion, Haku said, "My thanks to Makoto-san." He arrived at the location where Sakura was last seen and grabbed her before she fell to the ground below. Ignoring his stomach, Naruto hurried across the treetops, asking anxiously, "Sakura, are you alright?" As Haku held her in her arms, Sakura panted and looked ashamed, saying, "I think my chakra is used up." From where he and Sasuke had stopped, Kakashi remarked, "I see, that will be something you'll need to train up when we get back to Konoha." He took a step forward, paused before Haku, and then turned around. "Climb onto my back Sakura, I'll carry you back. There's no time for delay, we're recalled back to Konoha immediately." Curious, Naruto questioned, "But what are we rushing for? You didn't tell us anything, just that we need to get back at once." Kakashi gave Haku a gentle glare and remarked, "The third Hokage had called an emergency meeting due to Haku's thoughtless actions 6 days ago. Konoha is now urgently covering up her tracks to prevent anyone from linking us to Gato's funds. Team 7 is needed back at Konoha immediately to do a full debrief of the situation." Sakura, dangling from Kakashi's back, inquired anxiously, "Haku isn't going to get into trouble, is she?" In the short time they spent together, she had grown to like the quiet girl and didn't want to see Haku punished. Kakashi sighed and remarked, "I doubt it will be serious. I don't know what the council's decisions are." For lack of words to describe it, Haku had landed Konoha a large fish, although it comes with a lot of strings attached. Those troublesome strings are what Konoha needs to deal with at the current moment. Naruto said with assurance before going green, "Well, old man Hokage is very reasonable, I am sure he will not punish Haku." As Naruto throws buttered shrimps over the treetops, the other members of the group look on in disgust. Hokage Mountains and burial chambers in Konoha. Only one known entrance leads in or out of the Hokage Mountain, where the burial chambers of Konoha's Hokage were located. The vast burial chambers carved deep into the mountains were also used as an emergency shelter during Konoha's most dire time, something that most civilians were unaware of. Only the Hokages and elders of Konoha are aware of the various secret routes that lead out of the chambers. The second Hokage ordered the creation of the chambers, which were almost utilized during the Kyuubi attack during the fourth Hokage's rule. In order to maintain the emergency food storage concealed within the chambers were only accessed every 6 months. As a result, the chambers were completely dark when glimmering gray energies abruptly emerged. The veil of gray energies drapes itself over the urn containing the ashes of the fourth Hokage, flowing like silky silk. Nothing happened for a second, and then the clay urn exploded when a man's nude body fell off the shelf it was resting on. The torches surrounding the fourth Hokage's burial chambers erupted into flames as soon as the built.in seals carved into the walls sensed the presence of a living being. A man with blonde hair was crying as the orange lights of the flame fell upon him. The death god brought the deadly ninja known as the Yellow Flash, the fourth Hokage of Konoha, to life in order to murder Naruto Uzumaki, his only son and heir. Team 7, under the leadership of Kakashi and with Hiku in tow, had spent 4 hours running continuously above the treetops after departing Wave Village. Even Hiku was worn out from everything she had done over the previous few days, so they had to disband camp by that point because Sasuke's chakra reserves had been depleted. Sasuke was simply too heavy for the older girl to carry behind her. By that point, the sun had already started to set, and Kakashi had not given it any thought. Since everyone was still full from the feast, Kakashi had made a shadow clone to take Sakura aside so she could train up her chakra reserves, while the camp was swiftly set up. Actually, Kakashi used this opportunity to take Naruto and Sasuke away for their first private discussion since he had returned to Team 7. In just 1 minute, Hiku and Zabuza, the first Phantom Naruto, had called forth, were on their way. Kakashi had requested that Naruto refrain from calling forth the other phantoms, so Naruto was waiting for his instructions. As he led Sasuke and Naruto into a clearing, Kakashi looked at them gravely and remarked, "At the speed we're traveling, we'll probably be back at Konoha in 2 days' time. Since Sakura have to stick closely to us for the trip, it will look very suspicious if I have to keep separating her from our private session. So after this, for the next few days until we reach Konoha, there will be no summoning of the phantoms." "What?" exclaimed Sasuke indignantly, "but I can just sneak away with Naruto." "In case you've forgotten, Naruto's bloodline is supposed to be a secret. I'd rather not have you arouse Sakura's suspicions unduly. And I don't want to hear any complaints, this is an order." Kakashi sternly replied. He then swiveled around and glared at Naruto. "Now from my clone's memories, Makoto, Hizashi, Nawaki, Zabuza and my father had been creating various types of seals for future testing of what type of phantom bodies they make for phantoms. I'll like to have our first concrete testing of the seal bodies now, so that I know how to inform the Hokage of this. Subsequent testing of seal bodies will be conducted once we've reached Konoha." Naruto dug into his waist pouch and produced a bundle of paper seals, saying, "Okay Kakashi-sensei." He turned to Kakashi after cocking his head to the side. "Makoto says she agrees with you. All 6 phantoms, with the exception of Zabuza, will take part in the testing." Unable to respond that he would not be able to spend time with his mother because she had consented to the testing, Sasuke scowled and pressed his lips together. Kakashi took the bundles of seals from Naruto and started going through them, saying, "Very well, let's begin." Out of the bundle, he extracted 6 paper seals. "Let's start testing these 6 seals." The exploding tag seal body caused the phantom body to form in an explosion of fire, suitable for first line of surprise attack against enemies. Able to ignite objects, even to set a timer for the object to explode by touch of hand. Force of explosion is equivalent to the power of the exploding tag used as the phantom's body. A more powerful exploding tag will generate a more powerful seal body. The ability to ignite objects seems unlimited, and does not tap on the phantom's chakra reserves. Containment seal body apparently allows replication of objects inside the seal. Counter-testing of 2 phantoms in this type of body proved that the replication process is unlimited in nature and does not tap on chakra. Objects replicated degenerates within an hour, gradually weakening over time. By the end of an hour, replicated objects would have vanished. The electric paralysis seal body caused phantom body to form in an explosion of lightning, suitable for stunning enemies. It bears similarity to the exploding tag seal body, except that instead of igniting objects, it releases lightning energy into and around targets. Phantom in this body can also set a timer on the release of lightning energy into target. Enhanced durability seal body, a seal normally crafted upon weapons, allows phantoms to enhance durability of her body unlimited times. By the time an hour is up, Mei, who was the test subject for this seal body, had a phantom body that was impervious to any physical attacks. Might need to look up other enhancement type seals. Glow light seal body, a seal used in some places as a light source. Phantom body created was able to generate light continuously. Hizashi, who was testing this body, managed to blind the clearing with light. It however does not seem to have much use except for temporarily surprise and blindness, as even the phantom generating the light is blinded. Kakashi leaned against the tree he had placed his bedroll against and meticulously recorded the observations in his mission book. An hour ago, they had returned to camp after completing the testing. Before they went to bed, a quick meal had been prepared. As soon as Sakura's head touched the bedroll, she fell asleep. After training, the poor girl was exhausted and had the least amount of stamina of the 3 genins. He had remained awake to keep the first watch, and the others had followed soon after. He didn't mind because it allowed him time to reflect and document what he had witnessed. Even now, Kakashi shook his head in amazement, shock, and terror at Naruto's lineage. Yes, Dread, at a lineage capable of calling forth the dead. At a lineage capable of controlling unseen phantoms to carry out the summoner's commands. It's possible that some of Naruto's phantoms are still watching Kakashi from behind, taking in what he wrote. That the dead last of this new genin generation would inherit such a strong lineage is astounding. It might not be so great, though, given who his father was. Perhaps even more potent than the fabled Rinnegan, the bloodline supposedly descended from the Sage of the Six Paths, is the Phantom Summoner bloodline. Kakashi was terrified by Naruto's bloodline, but he also found solace in the knowledge that his father, Tsukumo, was one of Naruto's possessed phantoms. He frowned as his mind went back to what Naruto had told him during the test, which was that he had only unintentionally learned about the seal body's characteristics while experimenting with his Phantom Summoner chakra. Hisashi apparently found that Naruto had 4 opposing chakra types inside his body. The 4 chakra types can be divided into Naruto's normal chakra, his soul summoning chakra, the Kyuubi's chakra, which incidentally appeared to avoid the soul summoning chakra in Naruto's body, and an unidentified chakra, according to research on the subject conducted with the aid of Hisashi's Byakugan. Mei had hinted that Naruto's secondary bloodline, which was created from the Phantom Summoner's bloodline, might be this unidentified chakra. All Phantom Summoners, living or dead, were expected to have a secondary bloodline. Some had strong healing powers from their secondary bloodline, while others had elemental control. For Naruto, the Phantoms are all clueless. Nothing noteworthy had come of asking Naruto to concentrate while drawing out a strand of that weird black dot red chakra. Kakashi was weakened by the puzzle. A death god's energies collided with elemental energies to create the Phantom Summoner's bloodline. The elemental energies that constituted each Phantom Summoner's bloodline were reflected in the secondary bloodline that each of them displayed. Kakashi was a little concerned about what kind of secondary bloodline would emerge from the Kyuubi's chakra because he suspected that it was the elemental energy that set off Naruto's Phantom Summoner bloodline. "You seem troubled," a quiet voice interrupted. Kakashi's thoughts were interrupted when he noticed Haku staring at him from her bedroll, where she was half-seated. Not wanting to express his concerns, Kakashi chuckled softly and said, "Just thinking of how I should tell the Hokage the news about Naruto. After all, it might not be anything to worry about." Haku said, "Ah, I see. With comprehension. Do not worry so much. Naruto told me much about your Hokage. He seems like a wise man." Kakashi shook his head and remarked, "He is the legendary professor of the ninja world. You're right, I should place my trust in him. Get some rest, Haku, you'll be taking the last watch with Sakura. I'll be waking Naruto and Sasuke in 3 more hours' time." Haku smiled encouragingly at him and then tucked herself into her bedroll. Kakashi gazed into the darkness, allowing the sounds of crickets and the night's quiet to envelope him. He would be able to transfer the Hokage's responsibility for Naruto's bloodline to him once they arrived in Konoha. Minato's body moved mechanically as it gathered clothing, food, and equipment for use in Konoha's most dire circumstances from the emergency supplies store inside the Hokage Mountain. Shortly after its creation, Minato's body had been subject to the Death God's will. The Death God controlled Minato's body to make sure he lived long enough and had the right equipment to kill one Naruto Uzumaki, so Minato, an indentured soul, was powerless against the Death God's whims. His mind and soul, deep within his body, raged against the ruthless death. However, death was granted Minato's soul for all eternity as a negotiated item. He no longer has free will. Instead, he was a puppet and a tool of the person to whom he was indentured. Numerous other indentured souls of the Death God possess abilities comparable to Minato's, with some even greatly surpassing hers. Minato understood why death had selected his hand to kill his son. It was done to inflict pain on Minato as payback. It is a cruel irony that death, who was meant to be impartial toward everyone, only had a small-minded soul. The objects were collected by his body on top of a seal tag and sealed inside. Minato pocketed the piece of seal paper and watched helplessly as his body moved toward the entrance to the catacombs. The Death God's conceit was evident in the fact that he was going straight ahead to the main entrance of the catacombs rather than even leading Minato's body down one of the few secret passageways that only Konoha's Hokages were aware of. Trapped in his body, Minato's soul prayed for a miracle, but he was not even permitted to cry over his son's impending death. Once again, he had to miss the dinner he was meant to have with his son and grandson. With a long, agonized sigh, Sarutobi sat in his office and continued to go through the incoming reports. While Team Guy had defeated another branch in Wind Country, Team Hawk had seized Gado's merchant outpost in Lightning Country. 2 days ago, the 2 in Fire Country were taken over, and according to Kakashi's most recent message sent through his nin dogs, Konoha could expand its new merchant spy network by 3 more outposts. 5 days ago, 5 days after receiving Kakashi's first mission missive, Sarutobi almost passed out. A rank missing Nin Zabuza, Demon of the Mist, and his Jonin-level helper had engaged the Genin Team 7 in combat. Team 7 had managed to survive the fight, kill Zabuza, and win over Zabuza's accomplice. Surprisingly, Sasuke had also used his Sharingan. Sarutobi was concerned, however, because Kakashi's letter had implied that Naruto had suffered an injury during the battle, something he needed to disclose to the Hokage in person while Naruto was present. Given that his entire missive was already encrypted, Sarutobi had a gloomy suspicion that whatever had transpired was directly related to the Kyuubi inside Naruto. There was no other explanation for Kakashi's extreme secrecy. However, it was the second section of Kakashi's initial letter that had prompted Sarutobi to take action. Team 7 killed Gato, a notorious merchant who dealt in both the flesh trade and illegal goods. Then, without telling Kakashi, Zabuza's accomplice had gained access to and divided Gato's fortune, with Konoha receiving a sizable portion. Given that a number of foreign officials were alleged to have investments in Gato's holdings, that action alone was sufficient to put Konoha in a political bind. Only through the deft manipulation of Zabuza's accomplice did Sarutobi decide to use disguised ninjas to seize Gato's merchant outposts. According to the public, a rival merchant killed Gato and then seized his properties. However, Konoha gained access to a vast international spy and trade network. Sarutobi decided to proceed with the plan to subdue all of Gato's holdings because of that more than anything else. Sarutobi frowned as he looked up at a loud knock on his door. When people visit his office at this hour, they usually don't have good news. Sarutobi said firmly, "Come in." A pair of panicked Chunins staggered in as the door opened. They were identified by Sarutobi as being a member of the guard force vigilating the Hokage mountain. With a pale face and wide eyes in horror, one of them exclaimed, "Hokage-sama. Somebody broke into the catacombs." The guards who went to investigate discovered that the 4th Hokage's burial site has been desecrated and his ashes are missing. Sarutobi got up abruptly. Nobody would want the ashes of a strong, deceased ninja for very many reasons. I thought of the Impure World Resurrection technique, one of Konoha's forbidden methods for calling forth the dead. In an attempt to stop the intruder who had committed this act, Sarutobi yelled, "Sound the alarm. I want Konoha to be locked down and the ashes to be located at once." Naruto suppressed his yawn. Watch duty in the middle of the night was something he detested. Sasuke was beside him, lolling his head against a tree trunk and appearing to be half asleep. Naruto didn't mind that neither of them wanted to talk too much. Only Makoto, Hizashi, Nawaki, and Dan were present among the phantoms, and they assisted the two of them in their duties by patrolling the camp's boundaries. Naruto chose to practice using the black and red chakra he could create because he knew that if he did not do something to keep himself awake, he would fall asleep. From his left hand, a slender thread of the red and black chakra wriggled out. Just keeping the chakra strand separate from any other of his chakra types required a quantifiable amount of Naruto's control. Gazing at the strangely pulsing chakra strand, Sasuke questioned, "You still don't know what that funny chakra do?" He knew that they had failed to come to a consensus regarding the strange chakra's potential because he was present when Kakashi asked Naruto to test it out. Naruto shrugged his shoulders and said, "No idea." In contrast to the Phantom Summoner chakra, he did not receive any feedback when he attempted to touch a fallen leaf on the ground with the chakra strand. Sasuke pointed to the strand of chakra and remarked, "It makes the air shimmers though. See the edges where the strange chakra touch the air? There's a shimmer, like some kind of heat wave." When Naruto realized what Sasuke was referring to, he straightened up. The air surrounding the odd chakra strand was actually slightly distorted. With a focused expression, Naruto remarked, "Perhaps if I summon more of the chakra, I can see a clearer effect." His hands were immediately encircled by a black dot red chakra blaze that flickered like a smoldering fire. When the other phantoms finally realized what Naruto was attempting to do, Makoto and they started to head toward the camp area. "The chakra really distort the air, especially when I called more of it. See, it looks like it's burning through the air." Crack. In the clearing, there was a sharp, loud sound that sounded like 1,000 panes of glass breaking. Even as Kakashi, Haku, and Sakura were rudely roused, Naruto and Sasuke staggered back in disbelief. The air above Naruto's black dot red chakra blaze had broken apart, creating a growing black hole that hung in the center of the sky. Nothing happened for a second, but then a huge sucking force emerged from the dark patch. Sasuke quickly followed Naruto, who was the closest, as he was sucked in headfirst. A strong wind carried them off their feet and into the dark rift in space, with the others following closely behind. Before Dan took action, the three phantoms in the clearing exchanged shocked glances. As he disappeared into the death realm, Dan said, Go after them. I'll go inform the others. Without saying another word, Makoto, Hizashi, and Nawaki dove toward the gaping rift in space that was already starting to close. Even though she could hear the others' shocked cries, she felt as though she was whirling in a vortex of darkness so dark that she was unable to see them. Only a minute seemed to have gone by when she was spat out onto hard dirt, illuminated by blood-red light, by a great force. Raising her head and launching her body from her tangled bedroll, Haku surveyed her surroundings. Her body tensed in preparation for battle, and she held out kunais from her concealed arms holster. Her first observation was that Kakashi was already awake, his body tense, and she could see his eyes darting all over him. Sasuke was hunched over Naruto, who was unconscious on the ground. Sakura's face was filled with fear as she struggled to get out of her bedroll. Haku looked around quickly, and her eyes popped up in surprise. They had set up camp in the same clearing, but this time there was a bright red moon hanging in the sky. The atmosphere was heavy with chakra, and everything appeared blood red. A chakra that made the air on Haku's neck stand, despite its benign feeling. It felt really strong, whatever it was that was releasing the chakra field nearby, and disorganized. Haku's gaze shifted to the dark rip that seemed to have been spat out of her and the others and was hanging in midair. Her eyes grew wide as the phantoms Makoto, Hizashi, and Nawaki's physical and visible bodies blasted out of it, landing on top of a startled Sakura who was knocked off her feet. With a sharp voice in the strangely quiet air, Kakashi yelled, "What is going on?" Even the night air's usual cricket chirping sounds were absent. Even as he gazed at his mother, who was now physically present, Sasuke disclosed, Naruto was testing out the strange chakra. Something happened, a tear in space. The tear in space closed and vanished with a whooshing sound. As Kakashi approached Sasuke, his visible eye narrowed. Kakashi knelt in front of Naruto and lifted the boy's head to show a large bump at the side of it. That idiot. I told him not to test out that chakra without supervision. Kakashi swore. He's lucky he is knocked out, or I'll be shaking some sense into him. Makoto got up, disregarding Sakura's inquiry about her identity, and said, I think we've more immediate problems than that. There are creatures in the woods, and I don't think they are friendly. As swarms of enormous moth-like creatures and spiders the size of an adult man rustled out of the woods, Haku calmly remarked, I think you should call them monsters instead. They certainly looked like something out of ninja horror stories. Sasuke pulled out his kunai and faced the monsters that had surrounded them, while Sakura whimpered and passed out. In a somber tone, Nawaki uttered, This is bad. As the phantoms, Haku, Kakashi, and Sasuke surrounded Naruto and Sakura in a back circle. Kakashi leaned down to carry Naruto in one arm and said, Makoto, grab Sakura. I'll take care of Naruto. Cut a way out, we run. The battle for their lives started as the monsters attacked, and no more words were exchanged. She had no idea what had awakened her. Perhaps the lingering fear of what she had witnessed, or the unbearable pressure of chakra. Heavy air on her senses. She had not anticipated learning the true reason for their visit or the events of the previous few days in Wave Village. Sakura looked at Naruto, who had recovered, and exclaimed incredulously, You, or Sasuke's mom, and Naruto can summon the dead. He could no longer even see the bump on his head. Just minutes before, she had woken up to a condensed version of the events that had transpired behind her back over the previous few days. Sakura had been offended to learn that Kakashi was only sharing the secret with her because of their current predicament. Sasuke said impatiently, Yes. How many times do you need us to confirm your questions? Naruto said to Kakashi, I can't get it to work. He didn't even bother to glance at Sakura. Flame. Black chakra encircled his hand. I can't seem to open another tear in space on this side of wherever we are. Kakashi tensed his shoulders and swore, Damn it. This place isn't a genjutsu, we've tested that. It seemed like some warped dark reflection of our world. As the three phantoms in physical bodies flickered into the makeshift camp the group had set up at a nearby cliff, Makoto interrupted, saying, or a piece of the clearing and forest to be exact. They would only have to defend against attacks from one side because rock walls protected their backs. Since the three phantoms were already dead and, in theory, would not be dead if they were killed by the odd creatures prowling the woods, they had been sent to scout the area. Whatever this place is, it is a reflection of the clearing in our world and the woods surrounding it in a half-a-mile radius. The edges of this place ends in pitch black darkness. We tested throwing stuff into the darkness, even sent shadow clones. The shadow clones died instantly on contact with the edges of this place. Makoto continued to speak, causing Kakashi to S-phrases. We thought of killing one of ourselves to revert to phantom form and maybe contact the others. Hizashi said. But after some discussion, we decided not to. This place is crawling with giant moth and spider monsters. If we revert to phantom form, there's no telling if Naruto can summon us in physical bodies while we're here. That means less people to defend all of you. We might not be able to even leave this place in phantom forms. It has been 3 hours, Dan and the other phantoms should have arrived by now. Kakashi looked directly at Naruto, who recoiled in shame, and said, but they are not. Which means it is highly likely they could not find us. There are stories, ninja stories, of how the Sage of the Six Paths and some of the first ninjas could affect time and space, even create small pocket dimensions in time and space. The common seal tags are a legacy of those legends. The more powerful space-time manipulation techniques, on the other hand, were believed to be lost in time. Nawaki's mouth tightened as he speculated on Kakashi's implied meaning. You think Naruto's secondary bloodline might have created a sub-dimension, or reality, outside of time and space. A sub-dimension or reality that Naruto himself can't seem to get himself, ourselves out of. Which might be true since this place is highly rich in spiritual energies, very different from the real world. We phantoms have actually taken physical form on our own here, and shows no signs of dispelling. Naruto said in a low voice, I apologize. Examining his feet, I was just testing it out, I never thought. Kakashi stated somewhat harshly, that's your main problem, Naruto. You have amazing potential, but your impulsiveness is your one big flaw. But now's not the time for me to punish you. We came here through a rip in space. Recreating that might be our way out. Naruto, continue working on it. If there's a way for you to create an entrance to this place, then I believe you should be able to create an exit. Nawaki whispered softly, hopefully. Kakashi pulled out a bundle of exploding tags and said, in the meantime, I think we should defend this place to our maximum abilities. It's time to booby-trap this place. The 6 moth-like creatures that had wandered into the boundaries of their makeshift camp were surrounded by ice mirrors that flickered into existence. Haku was able to summon her bloodline limit and create the hovering ice mirrors surrounding Team 7 and the phantoms with ease because it appears that the giant moths have not yet noticed them. Haku started flickering from mirror to mirror without even considering pity for the creatures, at a pace that most ninjas could not hope to attain without specialized methods. From the numerous ice mirrors, a thick cloud of ice senbons rained down, hitting the imprisoned giant moths until they resembled enormous pincushions. As a few of the creatures struggled for their last breath, death knells sounded in the ice dome, and the giant moths dissolved as they passed away. Haku wasn't terribly shocked. It was the same fate of the monsters they had already killed in this world. Haku's keen chakra senses told her that the creatures were more than just vanishing from sight. In fact, the monsters were transforming into vast quantities of chakra, which started to combine with the natural chakra that hovered here like a thick cloud of chakra. In this dark reflection of their world, Hizashi, who had actually used his bloodline to see chakra, had said that his bloodline was effectively rendered useless. When he first activated his bloodline here, he could only see an opaque white in front of him. He had to switch back to normal vision to be able to see his surroundings again because the chakra that surrounded everyone was so strong and thick. Makoto had said that since half of the chakra was basically spirit energy, the phantoms must have been able to take on physical forms here because of the chakra density. Sadly, the chakra was so dense that none of the phantoms could will themselves back into phantom form. To see if they could return to phantom form in that manner, none of them felt like killing their present physical bodies. First of all, it would hurt, and second, they had to all lend a hand physically to defend their camp from numerous strong monsters of unknown origin at least until Naruto managed to bring them back to reality. Haku looked around now that the threat of the monster had been eliminated. Around the edges of the camp, Makoto, Hizashi, Sasuke, and Sakura were setting traps. It was the responsibility of Haku and Nawaki to ensure the camp's safety until the traps were set. In the meantime, Kakashi was back at the temporary camp, assisting Naruto in coming up with strategies to change his secondary bloodline's chakra in an effort to bring them home. Haku looked up at a flicker of light. The red moon in the sky had come closer after being far away at first. Indeed, Haku could now faintly imagine red, flaming flames moving across the celestial object's surface. It no longer resembled a moon but rather a bloody, fiery sun. After a moment of staring, Haku's eyes widened in surprise. Were those eyes and mouth on the moon's or sun's surface? With sweat streaming down his face and his hands feeling heavy and leaden as though he had been lifting heavy weights, Naruto slumped back against the cliff's stone walls. Naruto gasped in between sentences as he said, I apologize, Kakashi-sensei. I simply can't produce the black-red chakra anymore. Kakashi just looked concerned inside. Rest and restore your energies for a while. We'll need to continue trying until we have a way out. This is becoming worse than I thought. None of your other phantoms have found us. And I could not even summon my nin. Dogs. Something is blocking my summoning technique. That very something is what I suspect prevented your other phantoms from finding us. Naruto started to say, I know Kakashi-sensei, I swear I'll find a way to get us back. But Makoto interrupted him with a startled shout from a distance. When they turned to face the other members of the group standing at the edge of the camp, they noticed that they were all staring up at the sky. Naruto raised his head and let out a gasp. The thing he thought was a moon was hurtling toward them like a comet through the pitch black sky, growing larger and larger. Now that Naruto could see it, it was burning with dark red flames and more sun than moon. And seeing a mouth curled in what appeared to be a sneer, and two hideous flaming eyes. It took only a few seconds for the dark, fiery sun to rise above their camp. It was about the size of a small house, round, and burning. And it was hovering just above the tops of the closest trees. Ironically, there did not appear to be any discernible rise in temperature despite its close proximity to the camp. Rather, Naruto started to experience an odd feeling that crawled up his skin, as though waves of something. As he prepared a kunai, one hand already forming a ninjutsu symbol, Kakashi exclaimed in shock, that thing, it is manipulating the chakra around us, and cursed. Kakashi had barely completed his sentence when black smoke began to rise in the surrounding area of the camp. Giant spiders and moths filled the camp as the black smoke cleared. Sakura let out a startled cry that pierced the atmosphere from afar. It appeared to be an unspoken cue. When the monsters started attacking their closest friends and family, everyone erupted into action. As he cut two legs off the spider that threw itself at him, Kakashi yelled to Makoto and the others, get back to the cliff. While creating the symbol for the symbol clone, Naruto stood on unsteady legs. Only two clones appear. He was too exhausted, both mentally and physically, to handle any more. As a decoy to allow Kakashi to launch attacks, one clone started to leap directly into the middle of the monsters. The other was standing next to Naruto, prepared to protect him if necessary. The horde of monsters abruptly started to turn around in bewilderment, creating a passageway in the center for Makoto and the others to quickly cross. As he and Hiku arrived last, bringing the group to the back, Nawaki said in a strained voice, I did a Hell Vision Genjutsu. I can't hold it for long. Dispatch whatever monsters you can while they're distracted. Hizashi grunted and hurled himself at the closest giant moth, using his palm to blast it with chakra to finish it off, onto it. As he joined Hiku and the other phantoms in destroying the monsters in the camp, Kakashi remarked, Sasuke, Sakura, and Naruto stay at the back. Watch out for each other. Half of the monsters gathered around the camp were eliminated by the ninjas in a matter of minutes. Another shudder went through the air at this very moment. Sakura recoils in terror at Naruto. Her chakra senses were apparently sensitive enough to pick up on what was going on. Sakura said, fearfully gazing at the burning sun as more black smoke formed around the camp and solidified into monsters, it is summoning more monsters again. Sasuke yelled in agony, Mom! And everyone turned to watch, as Makoto, who was far away battling two enormous moths, failed to notice the enormous spider that had materialized behind her. Naruto watched in horror. Sasuke was already roaring with rage as the spider stabbed Makoto in the chest with its sharp, dagger-like leg. He rushed towards the creature, his hands flickering into numerous ninjutsu symbols. A fire dragon materialized and struck the spider, instantly destroying it. Sakura appeared to have found her courage and had hurried after Sasuke when Naruto staggered up behind her. After hearing the cry, Kakashi hurried to Makoto's aid and killed the two enormous moths he had been battling. Sasuke's mother gave him a pained look before closing her eyes as he knelt down beside her, tears streaming down his face. Her body grew motionless. Makoto's body exploded into numerous white orbs of light that flew through the air like numerous white fireflies as Sasuke reached out to touch his mother's motionless body. Then, as the light faded, Makoto reappeared in front of them in her physical form, staring back at Sasuke, who was still crouching in front of her in disbelief, as they started to blend together orb by orb, piece by piece. Makoto looked at her physical body and said, it seems that death is not permanent in this world. I felt my spirit leaving my physical shell before being forced to reform into a new body in this chakra-dense environment. My chakra reserves are also restored to their maximum level. As he positioned himself defensively next to the group, Kakashi grimly remarked, maybe death is not permanent for a phantom. But that might not apply to living people. As he appeared next to the group, covered in cuts and scratches, Nawaki said, let's worry about that later. We need to do something about that giant sun hovering above us. It is manipulating the chakra in the environment somehow, creating more of those monsters. We can't just fight forever. Naruto turned to see Hizashi perform a Hyuga style Jayuken, eliminating a sizable swatch of nearby monsters. Makoto raised her head and remarked, "Perhaps we can use ninjutsu attacks if we can get closer to it. It is now hovering at treetop level, one of us can reach it with a chakra leap." Sakura, who appeared exhausted and gaunt from the events of the previous few hours, asked incredulously, "Can we even destroy a sun?" With a hard glint in his eyes, Nawaki said, "I don't think it is actually a sun. It could just be some kind of weird monster just like the giant moths and spiders. Kakashi, can you boost me up into the air? I have a few ninjutsu techniques I can test out." Kakashi bent down and said, "All right, I am ready." With a nod, Nawaki leapt onto Kakashi's outstretched hand and, with a burst of chakra, pushed himself into the air. Naruto saw Nawaki's tiny body soar through the air, heading for the sun creature's side, when all of a sudden, it jerked, hovered for a while, and then shot straight at the sun creature, directly into its gaping mouth. Nawaki had intended to use a series of lightning and water attacks once he got close to the sun when he offered to attack it. He had not anticipated being seized by a force in midair and then propelled in the direction of the sun creature, whose mouth had opened. Fear gripped Nawaki as he vanished into the sun creature's black maw and slammed into something soft and slimy. Then he was surrounded by darkness as the mouth shut. He sensed that there was some kind of water collecting at his feet and that more of the watery substance was seeping into his surroundings. He made an effort to ignore the possibility that the water might be the sun's digestive juices. As he started to let loose everything he possessed within the shadowy confines of the sun creature, Nawaki said wryly, "At least Makoto showed me that phantoms can really die again." Techniques of lightning and water erupt from him, shedding light on the shadows surrounding him. Naruto looked at the sun creature, which had closed its mouth after seemingly consuming Nawaki, and exclaimed in shock, "It swallowed him." As he observed the monsters approaching them, Kakashi said grimly and with concern in his eyes, "There's no time to worry about that now." It seems that the sounds of the battle had attracted the attention of other forest monsters, who were emerging in droves. Nawaki will have to take care of himself right now. We have our own problems to deal with. Team 7. Get back to the cliff walls, we'll hold our positions there. Makoto, cut a path for the children. As Makoto carved a path through the monster horde with a fire dragon larger than the one Sasuke had controlled, Naruto and Sasuke scowled at Kakashi's suggestion that they needed protection, but they did as Kakashi said. The monsters behind them staggered back as Hizashi yelled, "Run!" White-silver streams of chakra blasted out of his hands in a circular arc. Makoto and Haku kept up with Naruto, Sasuke, and Sakura as they ran, eliminating any monsters that stood in their way. When they turned around as they reached the cliff walls, Kakashi and Hizashi were just in front of them, skidding to a stop. Makoto stood next to Kakashi, who asked, "Know any area-wide jutsu?" Haku was standing next to Hizashi. Team 7 is in the middle of the semi-dot arc formed by the 4 adults. Makoto eyed the approaching monsters and remarked, "Fire Phoenix, but I can only do the technique 2 times at most before needing to rest. The Hyugu style is both defensive and offensive in nature, but I can only strike at opponents within my attack zone." Hizashi grumbled, "I know some earth techniques, but nothing affecting a wide area in the distance." Haku acknowledged somewhat grimly, "I never really have the chance to learn any area-wide techniques." As his hands started to flash into hand seals, Kakashi remarked, "Then Makoto and I will go first. Hizashi and Haku, take care of any stranglers after we're out of chakra." Reign of the Thunder Gods. Fire Phoenix. Balls of flaming fire streaked through the air, entwined with a powerful storm of crackling blue electric energies that blasted out from the sky. All around them, dozens of monsters let out death cries. Approximately 50% of the seriously wounded monsters disappeared into chakra. "Again!" exclaimed Kakashi. The majority of the monsters were killed while still alive by the fire and electric storm that rained down on their surroundings. Only about 7 injured moth creatures remained close to the forest's edge after the fire subsided and the electric energies disappeared. Haku and Hizashi leapt into action, sprinting forward to defeat those monsters. Makoto fell to the ground, and Sasuke rushed forward to help her, but Kakashi remained on guard, pulling out a kunai. The few monsters that remained were ripped apart by Hizashi's chakra blasts and Haku's rains of ice senbons. Weary, the group scanned the suddenly silent camp for any indications that more monsters were emerging from the woods. Nothing else left the woods, and Sakura exhaled with relief. Naruto was about to remind Kakashi of Nawaki's fate now that they were temporarily safe when a noise resembling a thunderclap erupted overhead. They raised their heads and saw the sun creature break apart like a sliced watermelon before disappearing. Dull gray light from the sky replaced the blood-red light that had illuminated their surroundings. Nawaki was tumbling down the air from the defeated sun creature. His skin was bright red, as though he had been roasted in the sun for too long, and his clothes were blackened and scorched. As they crashed into the ground, Hizashi sprang forward in time to break Nawaki's fall. Nawaki, who appeared extremely exhausted and recoiled from Haku as she attempted to touch his blistering skin, said in a hoarse voice, "That is an experience I'll rather not repeat. I died 2 times in that thing." As he advanced, the others trailed behind. Kakashi acknowledged, "None of us are in much condition for another fight. I think it is safe enough to say we bought some time now. Let's rest while we can. Naruto, keep trying to figure out how to get us back." Looking at Nawaki's wounds, Naruto swallowed painfully and said, "I'll do that. I swear I'll find a way to get us back." They alternated restless sleeps. Makoto attempted the few healing methods she was aware of, but they weren't appropriate for the severe injuries Nawaki had sustained. Nawaki ultimately decided to terminate his physical existence in order to create a new, uninjured physical body. He became the group's main guard after regaining all of the chakra he had lost. Seeing the Genin's disturbed faces, Makoto and Hizashi had decided against killing themselves in order to obtain new bodies with their chakra restored. They would restore their lost chakra the old-fashioned way, by resting, unless it was absolutely necessary. They had been here for more than a day, based on the timer from Kakashi's backpack that had survived the journey to this world. Although Nawaki's covert reconnaissance had shown that the forest was still teeming with monsters, there were no more indications of any new ones. There were no more unexpected monster appearances, and Makoto was convinced that the numerous monsters that had suddenly appeared in the camp were caused by the sun creature that Nawaki had destroyed. The poor boy, Naruto, had been so distraught about being the one who put them in this situation that he had devoted all of his energy to controlling his secondary bloodline's chakra until he fainted. The others were sitting next to him, and he was now dozing off on his bedroll. Finally, into the tense silence, Kakashi said, "We can't go on like this. Naruto can't figure out a way to return us home yet. But the longer we stay in this place, the higher the chance we're opening ourselves up to attacks. I think it's time we act offensively." Deciphering Kakashi's intentions, Nawaki said, "By taking the fight to them." "Yes, but not all of us will go. We'll act in teams of 2. One team will stay behind with the Genins and guard the camp. The other team will begin clearing the surrounding area of any monsters." Kakashi was drafting the strategy. Sasuke rebelliously said, "I can fight as well. There's no need for you to babysit me." Kakashi calmly remarked, "I am not saying you can't fight, Sasuke. But the monsters are way above Genin level, and they tend to roam in groups. You'll all be safer in camp." Makoto interrupted Sasuke to say, "Kakashi is right. It will be more practical this way. A strike force of experienced ninjas will clear the monsters faster. I propose that the team going after the monsters be made up of phantoms. We are already dead, we can chance death and survive it again." What Makoto said is logical, and seeing that my skills can be more practically applied to close combat, I should be one of those going. Hizushi replied with a firm nod. Nawaki said, "I will go as well. 2 of us should be enough for the job. Makoto, I think it is best for you to stay behind to aid Kakashi and Haku in the defense of the camp." As Nawaki and Hizashi got ready to depart the camp, Makoto remarked, "Then all of us agreed on this matter. Godspeed both of you." As he and Nawaki vanished in whirls of leaves, their bodies flickering into the forest, Hizashi remarked wryly, "I've a feeling we'll need it." After 3 hours of hunting, Hizashi had killed 20 monsters, while Nawaki had killed 25. To avoid boredom, the two had maintained a running count of the number of monsters they had defeated. They were willing to obtain new bodies with their chakra restored. They sent their chakra drained bodies out twice. If they wanted to get rid of the monsters as quickly as possible, this step was essential. Hizashi and Nawaki were now cautiously creeping behind the 5 spider monsters in front of them after much scouting around the forest. Those 5 monsters, the two thought, were the last group to roam this planet. Nawaki grinned and said, "As a show of sportsmanship, I will leave them to you." With his hands flashing into the body flicker technique, Hizashi rolled his eyes. He emerged in the middle of the spider monsters, and they recoiled in shrill screams of surprise. Hizashi launched into action, performing a perfect Hyuga Jayuken before the monsters could react. The 5 monsters in his attack zone are sliced to pieces by streams of white chakra that emerge from his body in the shape of an interwoven dome. As he watched the 5 monsters vanish into chakra, Hizashi remarked, "That's the last of them. We should get back to the others." As the surrounding landscape vanished into a glaring white patch, Hizashi's words trailed off into a startled shout. He tried to speak but was unable to do so because he felt as though he was covered in solid chakra. In the distance, he could make out tiny human specks that had to be Kakashi and the others, and he could see Nawaki trapped in the white space near him. Then he sensed that a strong, alien chakra was entering his body and moving like molten fire through his chakra pathways. Hisashi felt the chakra altering him, and he let out a silent cry of pain, as it started to strengthen his body. Then he reappeared in the forest after a flash of light. Hisashi and Nawaki had returned to their phantom forms, and only this forest was illuminated by the intense sunlight. Floating up to him in his intangible and invisible form, Nawaki exclaimed in shock, "What the hell happened? My spirit essence, it doubled what it used to be. I felt more powerful than I ever did before." Moving in the direction that his spirit summoner bond indicated Naruto was, Hisashi remarked, "I don't know. But I think killing all the monsters in that world triggered something. I have a feeling we're back in the real world right now. We need to find the others and figure something out." With her bloodline limit activated, Hinata Hyuga was able to see far away thanks to her strong eyes that could visually cut through the numerous barriers in her path. Her team silently supported her as they trudged behind her. Kurenai, Kiba, and Shino had quietly supported and encouraged her when she took up the search as her personal mission after everyone else had given up. They even skipped valuable training time to accompany her to the outskirts of Konoha, especially considering the significant event that was taking place in 3 days. Only to pursue a hope, a dream that he remained alive. She noticed a strong chakra flicker close to the edge of her improved vision. A tear in space streaked across what appeared to be a clearing near the end of the forest, facing a cliff, and Hinata watched in disbelief. Hinata saw a burst of dazzling white light. Them. As Hinata stopped in front of the group, Kurenai asked in a worried tone, "Hinata, what's wrong?" With tears in her eyes and her bloodline limit deactivated, Hinata turned her head. Hinata shocked the typically unfazed Genjutsu mistress by saying, "I found them, Kurenai-sensei. I found Team 7 at last." Kurenai turned to Kiba and Shino and said, "Take us there quickly, Hinata. Team 8, we're moving out double time now." After feeling a surge of power, he reappeared at the cliff area, which was bathed in what appeared to be regular sunlight. As Team 7 and Haku attempted to orient themselves, Makoto had returned to his phantom form. Kakashi said, using his eye to critically examine the surroundings, "We seem to be back home. Did you remember what you did, Naruto? How you get us back?" With some hesitancy, Naruto acknowledged, "I don't think it is something I actually did. I only just woke up and was going to try again. When the whole world turned white before we returned here." Crunch. Naruto and Kakashi turned to see Sakura grinding a rock the size of her palm in her hands after hearing the faint sound. Sand spilled out of Sakura's open hands. Her face was pale as she gazed at Kakashi with wide eyes. Sakura said, almost fearfully, "I felt the strange chakra entering me when we were in the white space, and it did something to me. My chakra pool doubled, and my chakra control. I seem to be able to manipulate very small amount of chakra throughout my body right now. What is happening, Kakashi-sensei?" Kakashi scowled as he examined his hands. "I felt the same foreign chakra entering me when we were all trapped in the space of white. It empowered me in a way. I presume that is the same for all of you?" Haku tilted her head slightly, and Team 7 nodded. After giving his forehead a weary rub, Kakashi turned to face Naruto. "Very well, once we've determined that we're really back in our world, have Makoto and the other phantoms source for information about your secondary bloodline." After giving a nod, Naruto turned his head to gaze at something far away. Turning his head as if he were listening to an invisible speaker, Naruto announced, "It's Hisashi and Nawaki, they're back. They're in phantom forms, same as with Makoto. They said that everything must have reverted back to normal once they slayed the last monsters." With a thoughtful tone, Kakashi remarked, "So the monsters are the trigger. Alright everyone, pack up your things. We're headed back in the direction of Konoha. If we can reach there, it proves that we're back in the real world." Kakashi. A voice yelled at the edge of the clearing, just as Team 8 appeared. Kurenai strode purposefully towards Kakashi, who turned to see her glaring at him. Kurenai walked cautiously towards Team 7, her eyes alert as she glanced at each member of the group. "Where have you and your team been all this while? The Hokage had teams looking for all of you for weeks," she said. With tears in her eyes, Hinata gazed at the boy with the blonde hair and said softly, "Naruto, you're safe." Despite a flash of fear on his face, Kakashi insisted, "What do you mean weeks?" Naruto and Sakura gaped at Kurenai as she said, "Kakashi, your team, they had disappeared for a whole month, from the time you were supposed to report back to Konoha. Most of the ninja teams wrote Team 7 off as missing in action, but Team 8, we're one of the few teams that continued looking for you." Sasuke's face went white as he asked incredulously, "A month? We're gone a month? Kakashi closed his eyes and took a deep breath. His voice was firm when he opened them. Kurenai, if you would accompany us back to Konoha, I've important news for the Hokage. His ears only. Team 7, we're moving out now, we need to reach Konoha before nightfall. After exchanging startled glances, Team 7 trailed behind Kakashi and Kurenai, who had jumped into action, with Team 8 joining them. Haku trailed behind them as they dashed through the forest at Chakra enhanced speed. Surrounding Wave Village, he was perched above the treetops, gazing off into the distance at the village. There was a steady stream of traffic on the village's roads despite the sun setting. Many of the village's run-down homes had been restored with new roof tiles, windows, and wooden pillars. A steady stream of energetic villagers worked on the remaining houses, which were currently undergoing renovations. The loud laughter and cheery smiles of the villagers showed how happy they were. The villagers have been working day and night for the past few weeks, and nothing has stopped them from restoring their village. Ironically, the team that made it all possible included his son. His legacy, who, in spite of having no parents, seemed like a strong young man. The villagers continued to love hearing about the Konoha team, Uzumaki Naruto, and the other ninjas involved. They had told Minato how they had rescued their village from a wealthy and dishonest trader. Minato was given a graphic account of what transpired after assuming the role of a new merchant arriving in the village. Gato and his mercenaries' deaths, the battle at the Great Konoha Bridge, and Konoha's agreement to aid Wave Village. The incidents were developing into epic stories. Other than Minato, a number of Konoha ninjas had stopped in the village to inquire about Team 7's whereabouts. Team 7, which consists of genins under the leadership of his former pupil Kakashi Hitaki. The villagers were unaware that Team 7 was missing, despite the Konoha ninjas having urgent questions. Sarutobi, Konoha's third Hokage, appeared to have wished to conceal Team 7's disappearance until further details could be found. Anxiety over his son's disappearance and relief that his plan to kill Naruto would be postponed raged inside Minato. After serving as the Death God's champion for a month in a living body, Minato had discovered a number of limitations the Death God was subject to. The omnipotent sight of the Death God was unable to see the Phantom Summoner or those within a certain radius because of the intricate flux of death energies within a new Phantom Summoner. It was also a major factor in the necessity of a mortal hand for a Death God to pursue a Phantom Summoner. The Death Gods had to rely on their mortal champions to act as their eyes and ears on the mortal plane because they were bound by celestial laws and could not sense their prey with their Death God powers. During the first week in Konoha, Minato had been spying on Sarutobi and the Anbus to find out where Naruto was. Yes, he had made an effort to resist, particularly after realizing that the Death God required him to be able to find his son in person. But it didn't help. His body was compelled to gather information in the village because the Death God had maintained strict control over his living soul. The former 4th Hokage discovered that Team 7 had inexplicably vanished when Sarutobi called an urgent Jonin meeting and Minato was present. Through his master-slave bond, Minato had been able to sense the Death God's dark rage when he realized Naruto had escaped his grasp. Since the new Phantom Summoner would have sensed Naruto's phantom after he had passed away if he had been dead, the Death God had been certain that Naruto was still alive. The Death God then ensured that Minato had enough supplies to sustain his body while making him search the neighboring Konoha forest for any indications of Team 7. After being compelled to visit Wave Village, the final known location of Team 7, Minato discovered nothing but ostentatious stories about their exploits. Within those 3 weeks, Minato's soul was no longer under the Death God's control as he started to focus on other tasks that he had initially put off. Actually, Minato had complete control over his body for the past 3 days, save for a strong urge from the Death God to keep looking for Naruto. Minato was able to try to resist that urge a little. Minato could still avoid the Death God's attention for some time as long as he did not directly violate the mental order established by the Death God. After taking a final glance at Wave Village, Minato turned away and started walking toward Kusioke Village, a secluded hamlet to the north. It's a long walk at 10 miles away. Minato smiled. The Death God only told him to keep searching, without ever telling him where to look. And when he realized Minato's deceit, any punishment the Death God would inflict on him would be worth it if he could postpone finding his son. The Death God needed Minato to locate Naruto on the mortal plane, and he couldn't keep his hold on Minato's soul with his celestial responsibilities unless he put all of them on hold, as he did in the initial weeks when he made Minato a living shell. It was impossible to spend time as an indentured soul under the death that God had revealed to him. As a component of the great balance between realities and dimensions, Death Gods had daily responsibilities that they had to fulfill without fail. For as long as he could, Minato would exploit this flaw in the Death God's hold over him. Although the Death God would most likely discover it soon, Minato might be able to buy Naruto enough time to gain the strength he needs to survive when they finally cross paths. The Konoha. When Kakashi had shown up with Team 7 and Team 8 directly in front of Konoha's gates, the village guards had greeted him with surprise and relief. Since he had already started to head toward the Hokage's tower, Kakashi had no time for small talk. Kurenai's mind was still racing after learning that he and his team had been gone for a month. Naruto's secondary bloodline must have changed space and time in some way. It appeared to be a bloodline that was both dangerous and somehow gave everyone who entered and left the sub-dimension it created more power. Kakashi could still feel the power pulsing through him. Additionally, his Sharingan. Kakashi's Soul Sharingan eye had suffered an injury that was draining more chakra from his system. In order to prevent any negative effects, he required continuous control to manage the flow of chakra. He didn't have time to look into what was wrong, but at the moment, reporting to the Hokage came first. When Kakashi reached the base of the Hokage tower, his team came to a halt behind him, and he forced all memories of Naruto's bloodline out of his mind. A little later, Kurenai's team showed up, and Kurenai watched incredulously as Naruto, Sakura, and Sasuke appeared. Kurenai demanded answers, saying, "Where did you train your team for the past month, Kakashi? They are near Chunin level in speed. My team could barely keep up during the whole journey from the forest." Kurenai's question was abruptly interrupted by Kakashi, who stated, "It's classified. The Hokage will have to be the one to decide if you are going to be told of what happened." When Kurenai realized that whatever had happened was serious, her face turned into an emotionless mask. "Very well, I will not ask any more questions. I will head to the mission room to inform everyone of your team's safe return. In the meantime, you should head up and talk to the Hokage." With gratitude, Kakashi said, "Thanks, Kurenai." He waved his hand sharply in the direction of Team 7, then hurried up the tower stairs. As Kakashi arrived at the summit of the tower, the Hokage's secretary exclaimed, rising from her seat, "Kakashi! The Hokage and the elders are waiting for you." Kakashi paused and asked, "The elders?" The presence of the village elders altered his plan to reveal the third of Naruto's bloodlines. The secretary looked accusingly at Kakashi and said, "Yes, you and your team had better get in. The Hokage had been very worried over all of your disappearance." As he opened the door and stepped in, Kakashi acknowledged, "Thank you, madam." Naruto, Sakura, Sasuke, and Haku followed. With the two village elders on either side of him, he was met with the menacing sight of the third. The third had a frown on his forehead as he watched the three of them stand in front of the Hokage's table with solemn expressions on their faces. Sarutobi's voice was fierce as he asked, "Kakashi, where have you and your team been for the past 1 month?" As he pointedly addressed the two village elders, Kakashi remarked, "Something happened during our travels, something for your ears only." With an unarguable expression in his eyes, Sarutobi firmly stated, "Whatever you say can be said in front of the elders." Kakashi commanded, "Very well. Haku, shut the door." Kakashi's fingers made the anew hand signals for top secret as Haku shifted to comply. When Sarutobi and the two elders saw the hand signals, their eyes narrowed. Sarutobi's hands moved into different hand seals as soon as the door was closed. Chakra pulsated through the space. Even the sounds of the streets outside were suddenly muffled, and an unearthly silence descended upon the room. With his eyes darting to Naruto, Sakura, and Sasuke as though to look for any obvious wounds, Sarutobi sharply questioned, "What is going on, Kakashi? What matter is so serious that you needed me to seal the room?" He stared at Naruto's green hair highlights for a long time, and when he noticed the green rims around Naruto's blue iris, his eyes went unreadable. As though hesitant to express his ideas, Kakashi uttered the words, "I have to start from the beginning. During the wave mission, in the fight against Zabuza, something incredible happened. I believe you should have read my first few mission reports by now, of how Sasuke activated his Sharingan bloodline. What I didn't tell you was that Sasuke was not the only one that activated his bloodline. Naruto did as well." Kaharu, the female village elder, exclaimed in surprise, "You mean he actually activated the Uzumaki bloodline? Did something happen to the seal?" When Kaharu realized that Sakura, Haku, and Sasuke were present, her question regarding the Kyuubi's seal was interrupted by a trailing voice. With his eyes glimmering with curiosity at this fresh insight into his unidentified parents, Naruto asked, "What Uzumaki bloodline? You mean my family has a bloodline?" Kakashi turned to Sarutobi and the elders and interrupted, saying, "That's something to be discussed at another time. The bloodline is not the famed Uzumaki bloodline. Rather it is something different. A new, never-before-encountered bloodline. Naruto can summon the dead." As Kakashi started to recount Team 7's tragic wave mission, the fight against Zabuza, and the days that followed as Zabuza's phantom became bonded to Naruto. Sarutobi unluckily believed everything he said, even though it was impossible and unbelievable. The rare ice release bloodline wielder Haku swore allegiance to Naruto as a result of this action. It was clear that Kakashi genuinely thought Naruto could call forth the dead, and he was never one to make up stories. Preposterous! Homura yelled, cutting Kakashi off as he started to explain Team 7's journey into a sub-dimension to Sarutobi. You expect us to believe that Uzumaki Naruto actually activated 2 new, impossible bloodlines? Stiffly, Kakashi stated, I do not lie. Naruto, perhaps a demonstration might be in order. In a neutral tone, Sarutobi stated, that would be best. I in particular would like to see Makoto, Hizashi, Nawaki, and Tsukumo again. If what you said is true. Alright. But Makoto said Hizashi and Nawaki would not be able to stay in solid phantom bodies for long. Whatever happened during our trip in the Weird World place, it increased their chakra by almost half their original amount after they returned to the real world. Naruto said as he pulled out 4 stones from his pocket. Naruto threw the pebbles in front of Sarutobi, who watched. The 4 pebbles literally grew and took on human forms after a powerful chakra pulse. As Sarutobi gazed in disbelief at the 4 figures before him, his breath caught in his throat. The white-haired ninja Tsukumo, Kakashi's father, nodded to the stunned Sarutobi and said, Hiruzen, it is nice to talk to you again. Through a sudden dry throat, Sarutobi managed to say, I'll need proof that you are really Tsukumo. Tsukumo uttered the words, your first time, with a slight movement of his lips. Sarutobi questioned incredulously, my first time? Tsukumo started to say, sweet little Aoni from the Red Rose broth, but was abruptly interrupted by a red-faced Sarutobi. With a deep red flush, Sarutobi hurriedly said, I believe you. No one other than Homura would have known that. Makoto laughed artificially and said, my Hokage-sama, you're so trusting. Aren't you going to ask me for proof as well? I can tell you everything about the Uchiha. Especially the night of the massacre. The memories of that night filled Sarutobi's mind, and he closed his eyes in agony. He was already persuaded that the phantoms were real based on Tsukumo's words. Only Tsukumo and Homura would have been aware of his initial visit to the red light district of Konoha. Makoto, I am sorry. Makoto asked Sarutobi, sorry for what Hokage-sama? With a chilly smile on her face and an apparently unfazed expression. Do you know what it means to be a phantom? It means I became a wandering ghost after I died. It means I watched as Uchiha Madara slaughtered all of my clan while my eldest son maintained the barrier that kept everyone trapped in the clan compound. Madara was there that night? Wondered Sarutobi, startled. But as she moved forward and carried on speaking, Makoto disregarded his inquiries. Makoto sneered as she glanced at the 2 village elders who recoiled from her. It means I watched as my eldest son returned to the Hokage Tower to meet with Danzo, Homura, and Kaharu-ne-san as he took credit for the mission to eliminate the Uchiha clan. Even as Kaharu's expression shifted to one of guilt, a look of uneasiness appeared on her face. It means I saw Hokage-sama arrive too late to stop the mission. Sarutobi stepped forward to put a hand on Makoto's shoulders and demanded, Makoto, what do you mean Madara was the one that killed your clan? His frown lines deepened and his forehead wrinkled with worry. I was under the impression that Itachi was the one that did it. Makoto turned around and glared at Sarutobi, saying, exactly what I said. Madara was the one that destroyed the Uchiha clan. Surely you did not believe Itachi so capable as to be able to kill a clan filled with powerful ninjas? With a pale face, Homura remarked, but that's impossible. The first Hokage killed Madara during the battle at the Valley of the End. Makoto stated, without arguing, I know what I saw. And I saw a lot as a phantom. Did you know for instance Hokage-sama, that Danzo still operates Root in secret, within the village catacombs? Even though Sarutobi was starting to get a headache, he asked, Root still exists? It seems that I underestimated Danzo, that old war hound. Makoto gave Sarutobi an unreadable look and said, if you want answers, come and find me again. I only have minutes left in this body, we can talk more once Naruto has set up the spirit compound. But before I go, there's something I need to give back to Homura and Kaharu-ne-san. Staring at Makoto with a pale face, the older woman said, Makoto, for what it is worth, I have always regretted the decision I made that day. But I have to uphold my duties to the village before our friendship. Makoto shrugged and remarked, well, regret is not going to bring back my clan, is it? She then swiftly extended both of her hands and slapped Kaharu and Homura on either side of their faces. Sarutobi gazed in disbelief at the scarlet handprints on his former teammates' faces before turning to face Makoto, whose face was marked with anger and sorrow. Makoto turned her back on the two elders and walked to Team 7's side after saying, "That is for my clan." Makoto, Sarutobi said in an accommodative tone. But he was stopped when a strong force caused the door to his office to shatter into splinters. His eyes widened in surprise as a woman with blonde hair who appeared to be young strode in, glaring around at the people in the room. A few seconds later, a young woman with black hair came up behind her, looking pitying and carrying a pig. Sarutobi was shocked to see one of his first students, who would later become the renowned Sanin, and exclaimed, "Tsunade? What are you doing in Konoha?" Tsunade looked around the room and angrily waved a piece of torn letter in her hands, asking, "Where is that brat? Where is that Naruto brat who sent me this letter?" When she first saw the phantoms, her eyes paused. Makoto, Sakumo, Nawaki. Tsunade turned to face Sarutobi and backed away, her eyes wide with surprise. "Sensei, what have you done? Oh, what have you done?" A week ago, she had received the letter in the town of Rikura, which is known for its hot springs. Before finally finding her in Rikura, the letter's carrier apparently traveled a considerable distance to the towns she had visited. The young man who had delivered the letter had clearly been paid a lot of money to find her. Tsunade had disregarded it, assuming it was just another IOU from one of the numerous people she had borrowed money from. Shizune had opened the letter out of curiosity just 2 days prior. She discovered a poem. When Dan first proposed to Tsunade, he wrote her a poem. Since Dan had been her uncle, Shizune had been aware of it, and Tsunade had become extremely angry when she showed it to her. A fierce resentment that the letter's sender, Uzumaki Naruto, had violated her past. Oh, Tsunade had recognized that brat. In addition to being the village demon container, it was a little known fact that the brat was the son of the 4th Hokage Namikaze Minato and the former Kyubi container Uzumaki Kushina. Tsunade was annoyed that the boy had discovered a fragment of her private life. She had decided to personally go back to Konoha in order to get some answers from the brat. She had stayed under the radar as she attempted to find the brat, arriving in Konoha a day ago. But she found out that he and his group had disappeared a few weeks prior. She had heard multiple ninjas discussing the unexpected arrival of Kakashi's missing Genin Tima, the team that Uzumaki Naruto was on as she was getting ready to leave the village today. It seems that the Hokage was currently receiving reports from Team 7. Then it was easy to go to the tower and see what was making her angry. Tsunade had disregarded the Hokage's secretary's attempts to stop her. She had started by gently tapping on the door. After 10 minutes, with no responses. 10 minutes. Tsunade had recovered her original ferocious rage and had kicked the door open with the intention of stomping in and venting her frustrations to both Uzumaki Naruto and the Hokage. It was unexpected for her to see dead people, 4 fatalities, and in Konoha, there was only one method for reviving the dead. Her uncle, the 2nd Hokage of Konoha, invented a prohibited method. The resurrection of the impure world. To use a living person's life to call forth the dead. Tsunade backed away, screaming in shock, "Sensei, what have you done? Oh, what have you done?" As he slammed his hands on the ground, Kakashi uttered, "Earth release. Wall of earth." The hole created by the broken door was covered by a block of earth that started to rise. As he stepped forward and faced a startled and appalled Tsunade, Nawaki said, "I think we'll need to explain from the beginning again. San, it's really me, Nawaki. Dan is here as well, you'll be able to see him soon." Despite the pain of the words, Tsunade gritted her teeth and said, "No," she gave Sarutobi a fierce look. "How can you allow this to happen, Sensei? The impure world resurrection is a kinjutsu. It is forbidden for a reason. It requires a human sacrifice. Nothing is worth it." Sarutobi remarked solemnly, "They are not created by the impure world resurrection technique, Tsunade." Weary, he raised a hand to his forehead. "They are standing here right now because Konoha had came into possession of a new bloodline, the first of its kind. Naruto is the wielder of a bloodline which can summon the dead." The explanation to Tsunade was longer than the few minutes the phantoms had remained in physical form. Sarutobi then requested that Kakashi personally report on what Makoto had told him about Root and the Uchiha massacre. Sarutobi, realizing the potential of Naruto's new skills, had attempted to call in an Anbu guard to protect Team 7, or rather Naruto. But because of Tsunade's intervention, Team 7 and Haku were given a D-rank mission. They were supposed to go to Naruto's apartment, pack up everything he owned, and relocate it to the Uchiha compound, where Tsunade would watch over Team 7 and Haku, and then Kakashi after the Hokage let him go. Until Sarutobi and the village elders could decide how to handle Naruto's new bloodlines and what directives to issue to those involved, Sakura was not allowed to go home. However, because of the mission debrief, a messenger was delayed in notifying Sakura's parents that she had returned to Konoha safely. Additionally, Sakura was to receive a new outfit from the messenger. As the group arrived at his cramped and dirty apartment, Naruto sulked. I can't believe this is happening. I've only just arrived in Konoha and I am already kicked out of my home. Sasuke stated plainly, you'll have a new place at the clan compound. And on that note, you might as well set up the spirit compound as soon as possible. Naruto frowned as he opened the door to his apartment and said, Makoto-san said the phantoms are already preparing for it. Kane the merchant phantom would have the items to create the spirit compound by nightfall. Apparently it requires some sort of registration with the authorities in the death realm. There are some clauses involved in setting up a spirit compound in the physical world, and the phantoms are going through the phantom laws regarding it. Walking into the tiny apartment, Tsunade exclaimed in shock, really, phantom laws and bureaucrats. I can't imagine that. As Sakura followed the Sannin inside and observed the tiny living room, connecting bedroom and kitchen, she exclaimed, this apartment is so small. Naruto said, I am living on orphan stipend, I can't complain. He pulled out a big rag bag from a cupboard. As Tsunade surveyed the tiny, unkempt apartment, he failed to notice the frown on her forehead. Here, we can stuff the things in this bag. I can sort them out when we get to Sasuke's place. Tsunade interrupted, saying, there's no need for that. After learning about Naruto's bloodlines and his bond with Nawaki, the ferocious-looking woman had calmed down. Dan's role as a backup phantom in Naruto's phantom army had also been explained to her. When Tsunade learned she could see and speak with them once more, she started crying. She had also proposed that Team 7 be housed in the Uchiha compound while the Hokage considered their situation and the Naruto bloodline secret. Shizune and I can create storage seals. We can seal everything in each of the rooms in 3 separate seals. It is going to take a while, so stand in a corner and don't disturb us, Tsunade said with a nod. Drawing seal outlines on the living room floorboards, the 2 women pulled out a calligraphy set and each held a calligraphy brush with an ink tip. Haku and Team 7 simply watched with interest from the sidelines. The inked seals covered everything in the living room in 10 minutes. Tsunade walked to the middle of the living room and placed a white piece of paper on top of the inked seal on the floor, calling out, go to the bedroom, stand outside of the seal. She sent a chakra pulse into the seal as soon as she noticed they were out of the room. Everything was sealed into the piece of paper, and Tsunade was surrounded by a blurred whirlwind of light. Tsunade found herself standing in an empty living room less than a minute later. Tsunade gestured the group back to the living room and said, okay. 2 more rooms to go. We'll make it to the Uchiha compound before late afternoon. Sasuke glared at Naruto, who muttered, I am not sure if that's a good thing or a bad thing. Sarutobi cast a weary glance at his former teammates. The 3 of them, the foundational leaders of Konoha, had been greatly affected by the news of Naruto's bloodlines, Madara and Root. After completing his briefing 2 hours prior, Kakashi departed to supervise Team 7 within the Uchiha compound until a decision regarding Naruto's bloodlines could be made. And in those 2 hours, the 3 of them had devised strategies for concealing Naruto's bloodlines and for dealing with Danzo and Root's knowledge. They had made the decision to employ a binding seal, a kind of prohibited seal technique that prevents a target from disclosing specific information. With fatigue, Koharu uttered, it must be done. Uzumaki Naruto's new bloodlines are too powerful to let other hidden villages know about them. If the secret of his bloodlines is revealed, hunter nins from other villages will be after him to make his bloodline theirs. The binding seal must be placed on all those that knows of the bloodlines, even as elders, Kakashi and Tsunade. You will be the only exception as you're the one controlling the seal, Homura said with a firm voice. Sarutobi questioned reluctantly, but is this the right thing to do? Konoha discard all public knowledge of binding seals after the first Great Shinobi War for a reason. They are a type of slavery seal that stripes away free will. Between what's right and what's good for the village, the interest of the village must be put before mere moralities. Koharu was looking away. Besides, this move will probably keep Uzumaki Naruto alive. He will not last a month if the details about his new bloodlines gets out to the other hidden villages. And in the event that Naruto is forced to use his bloodline in public, the cover story we come up with shall suffice. Sarutobi sighed and remarked, very well. I see no other way out of this as well, regarding Root. They were interrupted when there was a knock on the door. Kakashi stuck his head through the opening as the door opened. Although Kakashi's voice was neutral, the expression in his eyes said it all. Hokage-sama, Team 7 have settled in the Uchiha compound. And they are ready to begin the next step of the plan. Sarutobi stood up and nodded. He was aware of Kakashi's hints, and Naruto was prepared to create the spirit compound Makoto had mentioned would give the phantoms physical freedom. Sarutobi looked at Homura and Koharu, who had also gotten up, and said, we'll postpone the Root discussion until later. I think it's best for us to head for the Uchiha compound now. It's time for us to meet again, with old friends, and get more information from them. Konoha was inside the Uchiha clan compound 2 hours ago. Makoto explained that the four-member team of phantoms was from the Phantom Migration Bureau in the Death Realm, and Naruto turned to face them. Of all the phantoms, one was nothing more than a big, hairy eyeball floating in midair with long, wavy tentacles dangling below it. Two more appeared to be lizard-man-like creatures. A dog phantom was the final member of the group. That might speak. So let me get this straight, to open up a spirit compound in the mortal realm, I need to register with this Phantom Migration Bureau place in the Death Realm. Agree to follow their laws, which is to allow any phantoms they approve to live in the spirit compound. In return, some of the approved phantoms will provide service to me within the spirit compound. The phantom summoner of this world. Naruto said with an air of disbelief. The hairy eyeball spoke, but it was unclear how it produced the sound required for audio speech. Yes, it is one of the recent laws set in the Death Realm. There has been an unprecedented increase in phantom summoners throughout the multi-verse as children of the old generations of phantom summoners awaken to their bloodlines. Many of the phantoms belonging to the worlds which phantom summoners have awakened were tempted and began to petition strongly for a chance to return back to their worlds in physical form. It is however a sad fact of reality that most average phantom summoners can only remain bound to a maximum of 50 phantoms even at the height of their powers. The governing authorities of the Death Realm, in response to the overwhelming petitions sent by zillions of phantoms, set up the Phantom Migration Bureau to address this need. The phantom with the talking dog spoke up. Creation of spirit compounds requires a phantom summoner to act as anchor to the mortal world, while powerful phantoms in the Death Realm pump pure spirit energies through the summoner. In the past, spirit compounds were set up for phantom summoners in return for a significant quantity of mana, or as your world call it, chakra. All that however is history. Now, in return for aiding the phantom summoner in setting up a spirit compound, the phantom summoner must sign a binding pact with the Phantom Migration Bureau that allows the Bureau to introduce phantoms native to this world into the spirit compound. This pact is binding to you and your descendants. It will last for as long as you and your family controls the spirit compound. But do not worry, the Phantom Migration Bureau will set up an office in the spirit compound to help regulate these phantom residents in accordance to the laws of the Death Realm. Naruto looked at Makoto and the other phantoms standing next to him before saying, "But I am supposed to keep my bloodline a secret." One of the lizard men interrupted, saying, "The Phantom Migration Bureau knows of your need for secrecy. Phantoms introduced to your spirit compound will have to pass through a selection process. We'll ensure those that are selected know of the need to keep your bloodline a secret. Also they will swear a pact to keep your bloodline a secret before their induction into the compound." Beside Naruto, Nawaki muttered disapprovingly, "By their selection process, they're talking about phantoms who can actually pay them enough chakra for their application to be approved. Good thing about those selected phantoms is that they are all going to be those with a lot of chakra reserves. Most probably meaning they are powerful ninjas or something similar in their mortal lives. Bad thing is, you can't order them around. Your relationship with them is similar to being a landlord to a large number of powerful residents." The hairy eyeball whirled around and gave the young Senju a menacing glance. With a nervous gulp, Naruto hoped Nawaki wouldn't foolishly agitate the odd phantom. The eyeball creature exuded a tremendous sense of power that he could feel. Sweat trickled down Naruto's brow as the hairy eyeball kept glaring at the casual Nawaki standing next to him. "But I don't understand what those phantoms have to gain by getting to stay in the spirit compound. I mean, sure, they get to return to the world they are born in with a physical body, but that's only within the spirit compound. They can't travel out of it physically, not unless they are bound to me as my phantom, after which I can summon them." According to the talking dog creature, they can't travel out of the spirit compound physically, that's true. However, within the spirit compound where they have physical form, they could still communicate with the outside world through letters or messengers, and any dealings they need to conduct in this world can be done in the spirit compound. Gazing at Makoto, Naruto questioned incredulously, "You mean I am supposed to allow strangers contacted by these approved phantoms into the Uchiha clan compound? This isn't my home in the first place." With firmness, Makoto stated, "This is your home as of now. You and Sasuke have the right to make your own decisions about who or who not to let into the compound. That includes people invited by any of the phantom tenants." Naruto warned, "I don't think Kakashi and Old Man Hokage will be happy about this. This is why you ask me to talk to all of you in private, isn't it?" Hizashi placed a hand on Naruto's shoulder and remarked, "I am afraid they simply have no say in the matter. The rules for setting up a spirit compound cannot be changed. The only concession is that any phantom residents let in are sworn to keep your bloodline a secret. And Naruto, you are the phantom summoner. The power to summon the phantoms is yours. You are your own man and you need to begin to learn how to make the best decisions regarding your bloodline, not to look for others to make the decisions for you. Naruto's thoughts turned inward as he bit his lip. After a prolonged period of silence, he straightened his shoulders and made up his mind. Naruto turned to face the 4 phantoms from the Phantom Migration Bureau and remarked, "You are right, Hizashi. I can't keep having others make decisions for me. I am a genin now, an adult in the ninja world. I will sign the pact with the Phantom Migration Bureau in return for a spirit compound. But run through all the clauses and requirements with me. I don't want to be cheated." The dog creature narrowed its eyes at Naruto and said, "This isn't a fish market, we're not going to swindle you." Naruto firmly looked back at the 4 phantoms from the Phantom Migration Bureau and said, "But, run all of the contents in the pact I am going to sign by me again. Sure, I know Makoto and the others have already seen it, but I'd rather look at it with my own eyes. I am the one that's going to be bound to it, I'll rather see firsthand what I am going to get myself and my descendants into." One of the lizard men sighed and said, "Very well." Its hands were filled with stacks of papers and a gleam of light. "We'll start with clause number 1. The number of approved phantom residents is in accordance to how large a spirit compound is. Konoha is currently inside the Uchiha clan compound. When Sarutobi, Homura, Kaharu, and Kakashi arrived at the Uchiha clan compound after leaving the Hokage Tower, the moon had already risen. Sarutobi sensed an unusually high concentration of spirit energy in the compound itself, and a chill ran down his spine as the group passed over the high walls of the Uchiha clan compound. It had the feel of spirit energy, but it wasn't. As they touched down on the eastern side of the Uchiha clan compound, Kaharu shivered and remarked, "The concentration of spirit energy within this place is smoldering. Have they started the process of creating the spirit compound without waiting for us?" Sarutobi leapt onto the closest rooftop and started running rapidly in the direction of their destination, saying, "Uchiha Sasuke's family home is close by. We should proceed there and find out what is going on." Every building they passed along the route was in poor condition. Reeds were growing in the lawns, and some of the roofs were even collapsed or had holes in them. It should come as no surprise that Sasuke's family home was the only building in the expansive Uchiha clan compound that had been abandoned and neglected since the night of the Uchiha massacre. The group's leader, Sarutobi, abruptly stopped on one of the rooftops and looked down in disbelief. The group heard the sound of a woman crying with joy and sorrow. Below them, Tsunade was sitting on a stone seat, sobbing uncontrollably as she was embraced by a young Nawaki and a man who appeared to be Kato Dan, Tsunade's fiancée copyright who had lost her life in the Second Shinobi World War. Sarutobi and the others watched in shock. Shizune watched the unfeasible reunion from the sidelines, her eyes shining with tears. In a quiet voice, Sarutobi remarked, "I believe it is evident that Naruto did produce the spirit compound without waiting for us. Come, let's not disturb Tsunade for now. We'll get our answers from Naruto and the others." They hurried past the next couple of rooftops and reached Sasuke's family house, where Team 7 was assembled on the lawn. Sakura was staring at 4 strange-looking creatures who were speaking to Naruto, while Makoto stood next to Sasuke. 2 of them resembled a man. Half-lizard hybrid, one was a flying dog, and the other was a big, hairy eyeball with many tentacles. Hizashi, Sakumo, and an unidentified young man and woman were standing nearby, chatting among themselves. There was no sign of Haku or the phantom Zabuza, who was said to have been bonded. As he landed lightly next to Naruto, who had turned to face him, Sarutobi said, "Naruto." However, Sarutobi's entire focus was on the 4 odd creatures that were in front of Naruto. "I see you've created the spirit compound without waiting for us. And who are these people?" Naruto introduced the scene by saying, "The eyeball is Azume, the floating dog is Yuo. The 2 lizard men are Menki and Monkey. They are the governing phantoms from the Death Realm assigned to this spirit compound." However, Naruto's statements only made Sarutobi more perplexed. "I apologize, Naruto, but could you please clarify? I'm not sure what's going on." Sarutobi turned to face Naruto. To put it simply, to create the spirit compound in the mortal realm, Naruto had to sign a pact with the phantom authorities in the Death Realm. Makoto said as she continued forward, "One of the clauses in the pact is that any phantoms approved by the phantom authorities can live a physical existence in Naruto's spirit compound, either as civilians or to provide support services to Naruto, such as setting up shops. These 4 phantom authorities are assigned here to maintain order among the soon-to-be new phantom tenants." A frown on Kaharu's forehead, she asked, "What? Why were we not told of this beforehand? We need to know of such matters." The harsh voice of Makoto asked, "For what? The way I see it, Naruto is the bloodline wielder. He is the one summoning the phantoms and making the pacts. It is his decision to make, not yours, not the Hokage, and most certainly not any business of the village. And regarding the matter of decisions, it's time Hizashi, Sakumo and I have a talk with you three old birds. Sakumo has been listening in on your meeting and your solutions to keeping Naruto's bloodline secret are ridiculous. Binding seals? You three are delusional if you think his phantoms will allow you to go forward with your plan. Makoto's suggestion that Sakumo had spied on the conversations between the Hokage and the elders in phantom form caused Koharu and Homura's eyes to widen in disbelief. Sarutobi just remained silent, observing Makoto and the other phantoms thoughtfully. Kakashi asked, his eyes narrowing dangerously as he gazed at the silent Sarutobi and the pale-faced elders, what is this about binding seals? As the other phantoms in the vicinity moved forward and stood next to Naruto in a unified front, Sakumo remarked, that's what we're going to be talking about. I think we'll need to put things in perspective for the Hokage and the elders. You see, we may be phantoms bond to Naruto, but in a way, we also perceive ourselves as guardians of Naruto since he has no family to do that for him. And we're going to ensure that he is not going to end up the short end of the bargain, while you three are deciding on matters for the good of the village. Naruto looked at Sarutobi in astonishment and appreciation as he said softly, Naruto is like my own grandson. I have only his best interest at heart. Makoto gestured to everyone and turned to face her family's house, saying, we shall see. Come, now that we phantoms can remain physical in the spirit compound, it's time we trash things out with you three. Kakashi. Come along as well, we'll need your opinion. Naruto, Sasuke and Sakura. The three of you will listen in since all of you have a stake in this. As for you four official types, go set up your base of operations. The old family home of Eniki beside this building should be enough for you. And as agreed upon, we shall leave the western and northern quarters of the clan compound undisturbed to serve as the living quarters of your approved phantoms. As the eyeball drifted into the sky toward the dilapidated building next to Sasuke's family home, it said, thank you Makoto, we shall not disturb you then. The two lizard men turned and followed on foot as the dog creature flew after it. Sakumo and the other phantoms herded the elders and Sarutobi into the house, and Makoto led the way, saying, we shall use the living room for the meeting. Makoto's firm voice broke through the clamorous arguments that were currently erupting between the phantoms and the village elders. Binding seals are little more than slavery seals. I will not allow you to use it on the children. Sakura was sitting at the edge of the big square table, Naruto beside her, and she was starting to get a little uncomfortable with the way the conversation was going. Those seals are going to be no better than the caged bird seal the Hyuga clan use on members not of the main house. Hizashi's voice was fierce. You say the seal is only to bind, to prevent secrets from being leaked, but the one controlling the main binding seals holds a certain degree of power over those bound by the seals. A change in the main binding seal, a silent trigger, and you can instantly kill those bound by the seals. I am not going to let Naruto start his new plan this way. Sakura watched the adults in the crowd raise their voices at one another while sitting in pale-faced silence. The entire discussion was turning into an argument. The Hokage, who sat across the table from the elders, remained silent during the entire discussion, suggesting that the two elders were losing the battle. Suddenly, the Hokage's firm voice said, enough. Makoto and the rest of you have brought out valid arguments. But the elders have also raised an important point as well. Binding seals are the most certain way of keeping the secrets of Naruto's bloodlines in wraps. If you are all against the binding seals, what other methods do you suggest in keeping Naruto's bloodlines secret? There was a long, drawn-out silence as the phantoms exchanged uneasy glances. Makoto finally looked at the Hokage and the two village elders before saying, at this moment, of those that knew of Naruto's secret, are all of us here, Tsunade and Shizune, as well as Haku. It is very unlikely any of us would break Naruto's trust. Tsunade, Shizune, Haku, Kakashi and even Sasuke are tied to Naruto because he allows them to see the phantoms of their loved ones. The true unknown factors are you three seated here and Sakura. You four have no connection to Naruto. No way to be certain you will act in Naruto's best interest. Koharu started to say, we realize the importance of Naruto's bloodlines, but Makoto shot him down right away. Makoto gave the two elders a mocking glance and remarked, yes, we all know you elders realize the importance of Naruto's bloodlines to the village. But if you give more thought to it, you should realize Naruto's bloodlines could not be kept a secret forever. Sooner or later, someone from another village is going to find out about it. What we're doing now is delaying the inevitable bloodline hunters that's sure to come after Naruto once the other villages knew. And Hokage-sama, even you have to admit you can't protect Naruto forever, he will need to learn to be able to stand on his own against the many powerful ninjas that's sure to come for him in the future. The Hokage calmly asked, what do you suggest then Makoto? while glaring at Makoto. The Hokage nodded in response to Makoto's statement. For the time being, let's put our trust in everyone who is aware of Naruto's secret. Our numbers are small enough that it will be very easy to keep watch on one another in the event one of you turn traitor. The Phantoms will be keeping silent watch over all of you as well. The Hokage implied that the Phantoms would be observing the activities of the living, and during this time, we'll need to rapidly build up the ninja skills of Naruto, Sasuke and Sakura to a higher level. Once the secret of Naruto's bloodlines are out, he will not be the only one hunted down. Many headhunters tend to go after those close to their targets, to use them as bargaining chips. Sasuke and Sakura, as his teammates, need to know how to defend themselves from such threats. With a grim smile that the elders did not share, the Hokage remarked, "You are suggesting using the basic principles of trusting each other while using the Phantoms to monitor the living unseen. Yes, that might be a more effective method in making sure Naruto's secrets stayed safe. After all, with someone unseen monitoring our actions all the time, it should keep all of us on our best behavior, as any wrong actions can be instantly revealed. As for further developing Team 7's abilities, it is going to be inevitable what with all that has happened. I suppose you Phantoms will be wanting to mentor the Genins then." Makoto said, "I would like to personally instruct Sasuke in the Uchiha fighting style and the Sharingan, with Kakashi's assistance." Sasuke grinned with pleasure. "Nawaki have expressed an interest in teaching Naruto his ninjutsu and fuinjutsu knowledge. I will also like to work with him to develop Naruto's potential," replied Tsukumo. "I will need to train a successor in the blade anyway, since Kakashi did not seem to take after me in that aspect." The trip in the sub-dimension seemed to have given Sakura precise control over her chakra. "I will like to guide her in chakra training based on some of the Hyuga clan techniques. Also, with Tsunade's inclusion to the group, perhaps she might be interested to take up another apprentice with high level of chakra control." Hizashi made a statement. "Also Hokage-sama, about my brother and son." The Hokage looked at Hizashi gravely and cut him off, saying, "We'll talk more about that matter privately later." To indicate that he had heard him, Hizashi nodded. Then the Hokage turned to grimly chuckle at the elders. "Now that the teachers for the Genins are decided, Kaharu and Homura, do you have any problems with Makoto's proposal?" Then Kaharu frowned. "While I might not wish to be monitored by an unseen apparition day and night, I can certainly see how it could be an effective deterrence to anyone wanting to reveal Naruto's secrets. Just the threat that someone is watching is enough to keep most people on the straight and narrow." Homura nodded and said, "I second Kaharu. I may not like the method, but I see the merits in it. And since this method will be better accepted by everyone here, I will keep my peace and go along with it. We will show to the Phantoms that we have nothing to hide." The Hokage came to a firm conclusion. "Then it is decided. Now, let us proceed to other matters, like the Chunin exams occurring in 3 days' time." "What?" exclaimed Naruto and Sasuke, startled. Kakashi said in a puzzled tone, "I've forgotten about that. What with the dislocation in time? If you want my assessment on Team 7's capabilities, Hokage-sama, I feel they are ready for it." The Hokage narrowed his eyes and remarked, "Good, because after this year, the next 4 Chunin exams will take place at other ninja villages. If Team 7 is not ready this time round, they will not be allowed to take part in the other Chunin exams, since we simply cannot allow Naruto to be compromised on rival villages' testing grounds. And if none of you can pass this year's Chunin exam, you will have to wait until the village council decide to promote you as Chunin through a majority vote, or until the Chunin exams takes place again in Konoha." Naruto frowned and said, "That doesn't seem fair. It is for your own protection. Here in the village, we can at least limit the damage should your bloodlines be exposed. On the home grounds of other ninja villages, however, you will be under great threat." The Hokage responded with firmness. "On that note, during the Chunin exams, you are not allowed to call upon the Phantoms unless you are in a life and death situation." Naruto nodded gravely. "All right, I promise." Naruto had started to realize how serious the situation was after listening to the Phantoms and elders talk about it for the last hour. He turned to smile at Sakura, Naruto, and Sasuke. "Now that this matter is resolved, Team 7, please leave the room. I am sorry, but I have something I wish to discuss with Makoto and the others. Go and get some rest, it is getting quite late in the night." Sakura leapt to her feet, relieved to be free of the stuffy meeting atmosphere at last, but Naruto stayed seated. The Hokage stared at Naruto in shock as he said firmly, "I am staying. I am the Phantom Summoner of Makoto and the others. Whatever they say and whatever they tell you is not going to stay a secret between me and them. Also, as Phantom Summoner, I have the right to accept or reject any activities you might ask my Phantoms to do." Hizashi smiled approvingly at Naruto. "That is true. We Phantoms are bound to Naruto after all, not to the Hokage or the village." The Hokage let out a deep sigh and remarked, "Very well. Naruto may stay. But Sakura and Sasuke will have to leave. There are things I am going to talk about that concerns village security." While Sasuke paused behind Naruto, seemingly considering asking if he could stay, Makoto said, "Sasuke, show Sakura to the bathhouse. The two of you might as well clean up and turn in for the night. We're going to be here a while." Sakura was followed out by Sasuke, who gave a startled nod. The Hokage turned to the phantoms as the door shut behind them. "Now, let's talk about Danzo, and on that note, I can see a lot of potential in using phantoms to monitor the activities of some suspect ninjas in the village. Is there a way to hire more phantoms for such purposes?" The three ghosts showed up and took physical form as the spirit compound. They were all three wearing plain ninja clothes in black and white. An old man with long white hair and a gray blindfold over his eyes was one of them. Despite his advanced age, he maintained his majestic posture and tall stature. As with phantoms, of course, they could change the physical age of their bodies by a significant and ongoing drain in their spiritual energies, even though their default appearance was the one in which they died. The only reason this phantom looked elderly was because he wanted to remain that way. Given their similar facial features, it was clear that the two younger men standing next to him were related. One had piercing blue eyes and short blonde hair. He carried a heavy hammer behind his back. His expression was at ease, and his mouth moved slightly as though he were grinning at a joke that only he understood. The second had long dark hair and fierce dark eyes, and he was a little taller than his brother. At his waist was a long sword in its sheath. But his face was a stark contrast to his sibling's blonde hair. He had a frown on his forehead and a stern expression on his face all the time, as though he was upset about something. The floating dog phantom that was crouching on a counter in front of them said, "Sero Mutsu, Sero Ichiji, and Sero Kaijo. Your phantom immigration process have been approved." He read a few pieces of parchment in front of him while lowering his head. "I see you've agreed to offer services to the local phantom summoner in the areas of blacksmithing, fuinjutsu, as well as opening a weapons shop in the spirit compound. Please note that you're only allowed to offer sale of weapons, armors, and seals, to protect the interest of the merchant phantom bond to the phantom summoner. Items other than the ones listed are prohibited." Sero Mutsu, the blindfolded phantom, said in a gravelly voice, "Duly noted." He responded succinctly and bluntly. The dog phantom expelled chakra, and a thorough map of the spirit compound materialized, floating into Ichiji's grasp. "That is a map of the entire spirit compound. All immigrating phantoms are allowed to have quarters in the highlighted areas of the map. A house with a shop front has already been assigned to you. It is marked with a cross on the map. Please note that an annual payment of 79,898,156 spirit energies is required for your continued stay in the spirit compound." The phantom with the dog replied, "We've already processed your payment for the first year. The next payment will be processed 1 year from now. If you've no other questions, you may proceed. I have a backlog of 20 other phantoms to introduce into this compound before midnight today." "Very well, we shall not disturb you any longer, Yuo-san." Sero Kaijo, who was friendlier, smiled and said, "Come, let us go and take a look at our new home." As the three left the Phantom Migration Bureau headquarters in this world through the door, Yuo raised one eye. Undoubtedly, the trio of phantoms created a striking contrast. Next, he yelled. This time, a young man with red hair showed up sitting on a big wooden snake puppet. "Watashi Sasori, you've applied to open a puppetry workshop, I see." Nawaki moved effortlessly in his phantom form down the catacombs. The majority of the night had been spent with Tsunade and Shizun's reunion. Until Sakumo arrived with a mission from the Hokage, with Naruto's approval, Tsunade had refused to release Nawaki and Dan. All of Naruto's phantoms were out in full force tonight, searching the ancient catacombs beneath Konoha in order to map out Root's headquarters and any potential entry or escape routes, with the exception of Kane, Mei, and Zabuza, who were tasked with keeping an eye on the Hokage's and the village elders' movements. In the tunnel he was now in, Nawaki stopped when he noticed a certain ugly trap seal engraved on one side of the wall. The trap seal would have released several earth spikes that would have punctured him if he had been in physical form. Taking careful note of where the trap was, Nawaki drifted down the tunnel and emerged through the opening into a spacious cavern. There were holes all over the floor, and the outline of a big rectangle was painted in faded white. The place must have been some sort of training ground. Nawaki shook his head. Behind him, he had discovered 3 more training grounds that were comparable. Root had dispersed all of its training grounds for some reason. Nawaki gave a headshake. Danzo's evil Black Ops ninjas were nothing short of shocking. The 3 tunnels that led to the training ground caught Nawaki's attention. The location of the one behind him was already known to him. Nawaki went to his left, making a random choice. 6 trap seals and 3 other physical traps that he could see were present in this specific tunnel. At the end of the tunnel, a huge metal door blocked the path. Nawaki peered through the metal door and was astounded by the quantity of weapons inside. Nawaki mused to himself, "Looks like I hit the jackpot this time." From the looks of it, this seemed to be Root's main armory. With a sigh of relief, Yuo concluded by verbally guiding the final group of phantoms into the spirit compound. Just as Azume, or the eyeball creature as the current phantom summoner likes to call her, entered the room after the phantoms had left, he floated off the counter. Naruto's nasty description of her had gone unnoticed by Azume. In the Death Realm, Azume's species, the Beholder Phantoms, were referred to as being considerably worse. It should come as no surprise that the majority of the Beholder race tends to act in ways that most other races perceive as sinister and malevolent. As she floated in the direction of Yuo, Azume declared, "Menki and Monkey have finished with the induction of new phantoms on their side. So have I. It seems you are done as well." Yuo asked curiously as he followed Azume out of the room, "Any problems on your side?" There was this particular obnoxious phantom approved by Central Headquarters. Called itself a Borg Queen or some such nonsense, Azume grumbled. "The first thing it did when it physically materializes to assault me. It has the nerve to tell me it is going to assimilate me and make me part of its collective. I quickly taught it the error of its ways. We aren't considered Tier 3 phantoms in the Death Realm for nothing, and it is only a measly Tier 17 phantom. Of course, I also terminated its application on the spot, sending it packing back into the Death Realm with no refund." Yuo remarked approvingly, "You are evil. What about Menki and Monkey? They run into any mishaps?" Azume said, shrugging its many floating tentacles, "It's all peaceful for them." Yuo stopped as they passed an open window and gazed out at the bright moon that was hanging in the dark sky. Yuo asked abruptly, his eyes far away, "Azume, have you ever wondered if we are actually doing the right thing? Following the orders of the higher-ups, to not reveal to all first-year phantom summoners what they have to live through." "You mean the first-year clause? The power of death is closely tied to the essence of time. It is one of the core cosmic laws that new phantom summoners have to spend 1 year to collect enough time essence to stabilize their bloodline." Azume laughed. "It is how the death gods can hunt down the new phantom summoners before their powers matured. Before the phantom summoners can ascend into death gods tied by no cosmic regulations. Not that it's any business of ours if this new phantom summoner should survive. Either the death god wins or the phantom summoner wins. In the meantime, us governing phantoms of the Death Realm are to stay neutral in this cold war. We do not reveal the location of the phantom summoner to the death god. Thus, if the phantom summoner survived and become a death god in the future, we've offended no one." With a distracted tone, Yuo uttered, "This new summoner is different." Azume gave a disbelieving snort and said, "What do you mean different? He seemed like another irritating human child." "You do know what I am, right? I am a demon dog, meaning I am closely attuned to death and spirit energies. I have been in the vicinity of several phantom summoners in the past. Those still suffering through their 1-year clause and those having matured in their abilities. I have gained quite an accurate measure of the death energies within them." Yuo said, turning to look at Azume. "The Phantom Administrative Bureau recorded that Uzumaki Naruto first activated the Phantom Bloodline 1 month, 1 week and 2 days ago. But the death energies I sensed within Naruto when I was near him was that of a new phantom summoner who have spent close to 3 months stabilizing his bloodline. He just need another 9 months of time to absorb enough time essence to stabilize his phantom summoner bloodline." Azume stopped and looked at Yuo approvingly. "You are serious?" Yuo answered, "Yes, I am pretty sure of my judgment. Somehow the boy has found a way to mature his bloodline at a rapid pace. If other new phantom summoners can replicate what he did, it will totally alter the war between the death gods and the phantom summoners. It can have great repercussions on the death realm." Azume asked in a calculating tone, "Are you going to report this to the Administrative Bureau?" "What do you think?" Yuo asked, his eyes gleaming with calculation. Azume wriggled her tentacles in avarice and said, "I think we should wait and see. Whatever happens, we're in the thick of it, and it may perhaps prove profitable to our career." Yuo flashed his teeth in a smile. "Yes, I am of the same mind as you. Let us wait and see." The three were suspended in midair, hovering close to the eastern wall of the spirit compound, also known as the Uchiha clan compound by the people of Konoha. They could see the numerous lights of Konoha's residential areas and other clan compounds because they were so high in the air. With a voice full of pride, Kaijo remarked, "Konoha, Village of the Leaves, formed from the cooperation of Senju and Uchiha clans, as well as the support from the lesser clans. Ichiji snarled in disgust. The Uchihas are nearly decimated, while the power of the Senjus have diminished. They are both failures, a shame to our blood. The old man next to them said, "Do not judge hastily." After taking off his blindfold, his eyes were sparkling as he gazed down at Konoha. A great change has come into this world. That is why I brought the two of you here. To observe, to learn, and maybe to guide the one that will become the pivotal point of this world. There was silence for a moment, and then the older man went on. The man said firmly, "As you've learned, Kaijo, not all will embrace the love for peace or have respect for all lives. And for you, Ichiji, time have proven to you that having great power does not mean everyone will follow your lead. It also does not mean everlasting peace. A phantom summoner has been born to this world, a far distant relation to the Senju, who may yet bear Kaijo's ideal. And a twist of fate has bind one of the last Uchiha to this young man. An Uchiha who has suffered through great tragedy, who chose forgiveness over vengeance. These two and those around them. Their very actions will prove important to the fate of the elemental countries. We'll watch, we'll learn, and then we'll provide guidance to those that needs it. But above all, we will not interfere in the natural order of things."
That's it for today. I hope you guys enjoyed this great story. See you in the next one.